Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something strange, tangled, and a little too alive for its own good. Imagine a place where the trees themselves lean in as if to listen, their trunks twisted and bowed, each one shaped like it grew in the middle of a nightmare. Where shadows seem to knot in the air, the paths change behind you, and the locals lower their voices when they speak its name. This is the Hoia Baciu Forest in Romania, often called the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Some folks say it's a hotspot for UFOs, others for ghosts, others for whatever it is that walks between those two definitions. And I'll tell you now, you probably wouldn't make it out of this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know your location and the local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice isn't the dark, it's the shape of the trees. They don't grow like they should. Some trunks curve into loops, others twist at angles that make your back ache just looking at them. Their branches tangle like old hands locking together, sometimes spiraling into perfect corkscrews, as though they've been caught mid-dance and frozen there for decades. The air smells faintly metallic, like rain that never arrives, and the ground is soft enough to remember your steps, but not keep them for long. The most common local story about these warped trees says they were cursed centuries ago. A shepherd led his flock into the forest and vanished man and sheep, both without a single bone or scrap of wool left behind. Since then, the trees have grown crooked, as if the land itself bent under the weight of that disappearance. People say the forest keeps the shapes of its grief. A lesser-known variant suggests the trees aren't twisted because of sadness, but because they're leaning towards something unseen in the center of the forest. Imagine a compass needle pointing not north, but inward toward whatever force hums quietly beneath the soil. If you cut one of these trees open, the rings wouldn't spiral neatly. They'd bend toward that point, just like the trunks. And then there's the obscure theory, the one you only hear from locals after they've decided you're not going to laugh. The trees grow crooked because they're watching you. The bends and spirals aren't random, they form shapes that line up with where people walk. Return here after years away, and the trees will have shifted, subtly, to face your new path. The forest, they say, rearranges itself to keep you in view. You pick your way along a narrow trail, trying not to step on the ferns curling between roots. The air has a thickness to it, a density that makes sound slow down. A bird flits somewhere high above, but its wings seem to flap out of time with the sound they make. Your skin prickles, not from fear exactly, but from the quiet awareness of being observed. Joke number 1. You murmur to the trees that if they're going to watch, they might as well charge admission. Joke number 2. You tell your flashlight to keep an eye out for any branches that look like they're about to ask for directions. Joke number 3. You warn your boots that if the ground starts moving, they're on their own. Every so often you see a trunk so twisted, it seems to have been wrung like a wet towel. In the well-known telling, these are marker trees, grown into their unnatural shapes to show visitors the way out or deeper in, depending on who's talking. The theory says if you follow them in the right order, they'll either lead you to safety or to the clearing where nothing grows. Of course, the right order changes from one version of the story to the next. Your own path narrows as you go deeper, and soon the warped trees begin to close in. The canopy above is tangled enough to block most of the moonlight, leaving your beam as the only thread of brightness. You notice something odd. The trees on either side of the trail seem to be leaning toward each other, just enough that if you walked away from the center, you'd brush against them. Not enough to scratch you, just enough to make it feel like they touched you on purpose. That's the thing about Hoia Baciu. Every step feels like it has been quietly approved or disapproved by something older than your language for these moments. You keep walking, and the forest keeps bending, ever so slightly, to keep you in its frame. The trail widens without warning, spilling you into a space that feels wrong in a way you can't quite name. The ground under your boots is level to level, and the air is open, as though the forest has taken a deliberate step back. You've found it. The infamous Poiana Rotunda, the barren circle at the heart of the Hoia Baciu Forest. Everywhere else, trees grow in their strange spirals. Moss clings to bark, and undergrowth tangles itself into stubborn knots. But here, nothing takes root. No grass, no moss, not even the determined weeds that sprout through cracks in sidewalks back home. Just bare, cracked soil, and a faint scent of something scorched, though no fire has touched it in living memory. The well-known story says nothing will grow here because the land is cursed. When the shepherd and his flock vanished, some believe this was the spot where they crossed over or were taken. The soil remembers the crossing, and life refuses to grow where that doorway once stood. People call it a dead zone, though the quiet feels more like waiting than absence. A lesser-known variant claims the clearing isn't barren because of what happened in the past. It's barren because something still needs the space. The ground is kept empty, as if reserved for a gathering that happens out of sight. In this version, the clearing is a stage, and the forest is the audience, leaning in for the next act. Then there's the obscure theory, whispered with the same kind of shrug people give when they're not sure if they're joking. The clearing is not actually barren at all. What you see is a disguise, a projection the forest casts over something else. Stand in the right spot, at the right time, and you'll see what really grows here. Some say it's not plants at all, but shapes tall, thin, and moving in a rhythm older than the trees. You take a slow step into the center, expecting some kind of change, a shift in the air, a drop in temperature, but what happens is subtler. The forest's background noise fades. No bird calls, no rustle of leaves. Even your footsteps sound muted, as if you've walked into a room with thick carpeting. The only thing you hear is your own breathing. Joke number 1. You tell the clearing it could use a decorator. Joke number 2. You wonder aloud if the forest just muted you for swearing under your breath. Joke number 3. You tell your flashlight this would be a perfect spot for a Wi-Fi router, if only it didn't seem like the kind of place to eat electronics for breakfast. Many who've stood here talk about a faint vibration underfoot, like the ground is humming. You pause, testing it. It's not constant, more like a pulse every few seconds. Could be your imagination, could be blood in your ears, or it could be exactly what the locals mean when they say the land has a heartbeat. You turn slowly, taking in the ring of trees that encircles the clearing. They're evenly spaced, their trunks bent toward the center, not haphazardly like elsewhere in the forest, but as if they've been leaning here for decades, listening to whatever the bare earth might say. The mystery of the clearing has spawned countless theories: magnetic anomalies, radiation pockets, ancient ritual sites, alien landing pads. Scientists have taken soil samples and found nothing unusual, though some admit their instruments behaved strangely here. Skeptics argue the barrenness is the result of human activity, perhaps an old building site or livestock pen, but no one can explain why. In a forest that constantly reclaims anything left alone, this one patch has stayed empty for centuries. You kneel and press your palm to the ground. It's cool, not cold, but there's a depth to the temperature, as if it comes from far below. For a moment, you think you feel a faint, slow push against your hand, like something beneath the surface is exhaling. The cat, wait, when did the cat join you? Is sitting at the edge of the clearing, tail wrapped neatly around its paws. It blinks at you once, then turns its head toward the far tree line, where the shadows seem just a little thicker. You stand, brushing soil from your hand, and follow its gaze. The trail there is narrow and dark, a small opening in the wall of leaning trees. Something about it feels expectant, as if the clearing has finished with you and is passing you along to the next part of the forest's design. You step toward the narrow opening between the bent trunks, the cat slipping ahead like a shadow that knows the way. The moment you cross from the barren, clearing back under the canopy, the air changes. It's heavier, charged with a faint prickling static that dances along the hair on your arms. Your ears pop, the way they do on a mountain road, and you get the distinct sense that the sky above has done something it shouldn't. The trail here is lined with pines that arch inward, their crowns knitting together so tightly that only splinters of moonlight reach the forest floor. Somewhere high above, there's movement, no branches snapping, just a kind of rolling shimmer, like heat waves bending the air. You glance up and freeze. The most common story about this part of Hoia Baciu is that people have seen lights in the sky floating, darting, changing color in ways no aircraft should. Some call them UFOs, others think they're some kind of plasma phenomenon, like ball lightning without the storm. They often appear just over the treetops, making no sound, sometimes following the paths below, as if curious about who's wandering there. The lesser-known version is stranger still. The lights don't come from above at all. In this telling, they rise from the forest floor itself, slipping upward through the branches like glowing smoke. They flicker and dance until they pierce the canopy, then vanish into the night as if they've been swallowed. People who've seen this say the glow doesn't light the trees, it lights you, as though the forest wants to make sure you're visible to something overhead. And then there's the obscure theory, the one that feels less like folklore and more like a quiet warning. The lights aren't moving through space in the way you think, they're bending it. The shimmering in the air isn't heat, it's a seam, a fold, a wrinkle in the fabric of here and now. Step under the right shimmer at the wrong time, and you might not come back out in the same hour you left. Above you, a pale green streak slices across the gap in the trees. It's not fast, more like a deliberate glide. It curves, impossibly, banking in a way no falling star ever could. And for a heartbeat, you think it's heading straight for you. The beam of your flashlight dims, as if in deference, and the static in the air sharpens. Then, without a sound, the light curves away and vanishes between the trees. Joke number 1. You tell the forest you appreciate the special effects budget. Joke number 2. You ask the cat if this counts as first contact, and whether you should shake hands or pause. Joke number 3. You tell your flashlight it's not allowed to get stage fright at the first sign of an audience. The air is still shimmering in patches, rippling like the surface of water in sunlight, but you're certain no sunlight could reach this deep. You step forward, and one of the ripples shifts overhead. For just an instant, the trees above look taller, their trunks thinner, as if the whole forest is stretching in a deep breath. Then, it's gone. People often report losing time in this part of the woods. Watches slow or stop entirely, phone batteries drain, and shadows move in ways that don't match the light. Some claim the lights in the sky are linked to these glitches, that when they pass overhead, the rules of the forest soften just enough for time to slip sideways. Skeptics write it off as heightened nerves in an already unsettling place, but even the calmest hikers tend to walk a little faster here. The cat pauses at a bend in the trail, looking back to make sure you're still following. Beyond it, the darkness deepens, and the air smells faintly of rain, though the sky you glimpsed above was clear. Somewhere far ahead, a soft crackling sound begins, like distant electricity or a radio tuned to a station between stations. You realize you're holding your breath. The forest exhales, long and slow, and the shimmer fades from the air. You step forward, leaving the bending sky behind, though the hair on your arms doesn't quite settle. The trail sinks into a shallow fold of earth where the pines drink more darkness than they should, and the temperature slips down a notch you feel in your teeth. The air thickens wet, cool, and faintly mineral, and then you see it building ahead, a pale drift pooling close to the ground, the first small breath of mist. It clings to roots and low shrubs, curls around stones like a cat deciding whether to nap, then rises slow at first, then with a steadier purpose until the path becomes a gray ribbon through a low, moving sea. Hoia Baciu's fog isn't exactly famous, it's simply expected. In the most common telling, it appears where the ground hollows and the wind forgets to show up. It slides in without a sound and hangs there, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, thick enough that you can't see your hand at arm's length. People say that's when faces form soft impressions that stand just long enough for a heartbeat, features made of breath and dew. Not every face is kind, not every face is human, but the faces are why hikers leave apples on stumps and speak politely to the air, just in case good manners travel well in vapor. You take a step into it, and your world shrinks to a globe of gray. Your flashlight's beam becomes a short, blooming column that spills light like milk. The cat is a darker smear against the pale, tail-sketching punctuation as it moves. You angle the beam low to cut the glare and the fog eddies, swirling in layered rings that reveal then conceal the path. The needles underfoot go quiet, your footfalls damp to polite suggestions. The entire forest feels like it's leaning over your shoulder to whisper, "Now pay attention." A lesser-known variant makes the fog more particular. In that version, it comes not with weather, but with mood. Arguments stir it up, laughter thins it, sorrow calls it from the hollows like a name. Couples who bicker here report being swallowed in seconds, only to stumble out in silence as if the air scolded them into truce. Solo walkers who arrive bold and leave quiet swear the mist climbed their throat like soft hands and pressed there until bravado found the door. It sounds sentimental until you notice how your own breathing slows to match the room longer, slower, as if the forest wants you lullaby soft before it shows you anything. Then there's the obscure theory, the one traded in late-night circles where people carry thermoses and speak science with reverence and side eyes. It claims the fog in Hoia Baciu is microscopically odd. Droplet size is skewed, charged in a way that plays with light, bending it into brief recognizable patterns the brain can't help but assemble. Faces, yes, but also hands, shoulders, and once, according to a photograph no one can find twice, a stag whose antlers were a crown of vapor. In that telling, the forest isn't haunted. Your optics are. You file it in the possible drawer with a note. Occam enjoys a walk. 2. The mist thickens another degree. Your beam now shows motion, where there isn't any eddies and whorls that convince your eyes the air is stepping closer. You hold still to let the patterns settle, and that's when you catch it. An oval within the gray, a slightly darker density that holds, then resolves into a forehead, a hint of cheek, the bridge of a nose. The mouth never comes. The oval leans as if to examine you, the way a portrait follows you across a room. Your next breath scatters it into threads that wind around your wrists and recombine behind your elbow as something else entirely. Not a face anymore. A hand. No, the suggestion of fingers curling, then loosening like kelp in a tide. Joke number 1. You whisper that you appreciate the effort but would prefer your fan club to maintain clearer boundaries. Joke number 2. You tell the fog you'll be taking autographs later, which earns you the smallest, silliest smile you didn't mean to make. Joke number 3. You apologize in advance to your laundry for how the smell of mysterious weather tends to cling. You move again, slow enough that your beam has time to read the floor. The cat glides a pace ahead, vanishing and reappearing with each thicker curl, like a magician reluctantly honoring a contract. On your right, the fog shapes itself into a profile for 2 breaths, a high brow. An elegant slope of nose then flips that image inside out into the negative of a face, cheekbones hollowed by nothing, eyes replaced by 2 pallid coins. On your left, a smaller oval scampers along beside your knee, keeping pace like a child would if the child were made of steam and patience. The oval lifts, warps into a smile you feel in your spine rather than see with your eyes, and dissolves in a small, private swirl, as if amused by its own joke. The unresolved mystery that hikers love to argue about in the cafe after is whether these faces aim themselves. Are they pulling from your memories, rearranging cheek and chin from the last photo you scrolled past? Or are they independent sketches the forest keeps and reuses? Some swear the faces mimic the people present, modern haircuts in antique weather. Others insist the features are old world, scarves and mustaches, high collars, the kind of bone structure you find in sepia portraits. Skeptics propose a third option. Once you arrive expecting faces, the fog knows you will find them. The same way you find dragons in clouds when you're 9 and on your back in summer grass. A windless draft runs through the hollow then, a horizontal ribbon that moves the fog without moving the needles. It braids your light into a slow helix and, for a heartbeat, sketches a circle perfect, as if drawn by compass just at shoulder height. The ring glows denser than the air around it, and, inside the ring, a face appears with the sort of detail that makes courtesy feel urgent. Deep-set eyes, a long, narrow mouth, the line of a beard that doesn't quite connect at the chin. The ring tilts, as though it were hung on a nail in the sky and bumped by a passerby, and the face inside stays still while the frame turns. Then the ring lifts, slips over your shoulder like a scarf, and breaks into fine filaments that cool your neck. You do not hurry. Hoia Baciu rewards slowness the way museums do. You raise your free hand, palm out, and the fog folds against it in delicate waves. The sensation is nothing air, cool and damp and everything, because the waves arrange themselves into 5 small arcs that sit politely on your lifeline before falling away like spent breath. The cat watches this with the bored respect of someone who has seen better sleights of hand. There's a local variant that threads into this moment, the story of the girl who vanished here and came back years later, unchanged, same dress, same height, hair still tied with the same red ribbon, not a day older. When pressed, elders say she was found at the edge of a fog bank, standing very still with her hand raised, as if holding someone else's. Ask them who, and they'll shrug toward the pines and change the subject. You tuck the detail in your pocket, a seed you'll water when the forest decides it's time. Another obscure interpretation believes the mist is a translation layer. It makes everything halfway between what it is and what it might be. Branch to arm, burr to button, knot of air to watchful brow. Step into it and you are also halfway to fear. to wonder, to a version of yourself who takes smaller steps and listens with the skin. If you think of it that way, the faces are not visitors at all. They are possibilities the forest holds up, like fittings in a mirror. This one, you settle on your own face, which is tired and awake and fine. The fog begins to thin the way a daydream does when a car ride nears its end. The beam stretches farther. The ground reappears in wider strokes. Shapes collapse back into weather. Ahead, the hollow rises toward an opening in the canopy, and a paler gray waits beyond dawn's cousin, or simply thinner air. You glance back and the mist is behaving itself again, draped low and innocent across the dip, making a liar of your nerves. Just before the edge of it, the fog offers one last composition. Two ovals side by side at your hip height, paired like lanterns. They brighten softly, then blink the way eyes do when tears are almost a thing. You breathe in, and they borrow your breath. You breathe out, and they return it cooler and steadier than you managed on your own. The ovals lift, drift apart, and fold into nothing with a seamstress's neatness. You step out of the hollow, and sound returns as if someone slid a fader up, needles hiss underfoot. A distant bird clears its throat, your own jacket scuffs your sleeve. The cat shakes once, sending a few beads of water from whiskers that never actually touched rain, and looks ahead with the satisfied air of a host on schedule. Behind you, the fog settles back into its bowl and pretends to be simple weather. Ahead, the path bends toward a stretch where stories say a girl once reappeared without a wrinkle on her dress, and where, even now, children's laughter drifts between trunks with no children attached. You follow the bend, a little softer in the shoulders, a little slower in the feet, carrying a small, deliberate calm, the mist left on your skin like a note. The path narrows again, framed by pine and birch, their branches threading together overhead into a high, shadowed tunnel. The air feels lighter here, less damp than the hollow you just left, but there's an undercurrent of stillness that makes you slow down without meaning to. The cat moves ahead in small, deliberate steps, tail low, ears angled, not afraid exactly, just paying attention in that feline way that suggests you should too. You've heard the story before, the one everyone in Cluj tells at least once when talking about Hoia Baciu, the legend of the girl who went missing in the forest for years, only to return as if no time had passed. In the most common telling, she was about 5 years old when she wandered in, chasing a butterfly or following the sound of a stream. Search parties combed the area for days, then weeks, but she was gone. No torn clothing, no footprints, no sign of struggle. Her family mourned, as families do. And then, without warning, she stepped out of the forest one afternoon, wearing the same dress, the same shoes, her hair still tied with the same faded red ribbon. She was exactly as she had been on the day she vanished, no older, no taller, no heavier. She didn't know she'd been gone. She didn't know where she'd been. When they asked her what she remembered, she only frowned and said she'd been with the nice people in the bright place, and that they had told her it wasn't time yet. She never elaborated, and after a while, people stopped asking. A lesser-known variant insists the girl had aged, but in the wrong ways. She was taller, yes, but her eyes were older, sharper, holding the kind of tired you only see in people who've lived long enough to stop pretending. She spoke Romanian with an accent her parents didn't recognize, and she kept looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something to follow. When she finally slept that first night back, her family said she whispered in her dreams in a language no one knew. And then there's the obscure theory that the girl wasn't the girl at all. She was something else wearing her face. The bright place was not a location, but a state, a holding pattern, while something decided what to send back in her place. In this telling, the forest doesn't just take, it returns what it thinks you need. Whether you should trust what you're given is another matter entirely. You walk slower now, noticing how the forest here seems to hush in layers. The bird song you heard earlier is gone, replaced by a distant, almost inaudible hum. The sound is too steady to be wind, too deep to be an insect. It sits low in your chest like a held breath. The cat stops and turns, watching you as if to check that you've noticed it too. Joke number 1. You tell the forest you're flattered. It's rolled out a red carpet of creepiness just for you. Joke number 2. You promise the cat you'll start paying it a guide's fee if it keeps choosing routes this atmospheric. Joke number 3. You mutter that if you start speaking an unknown language in your sleep tonight, you expect someone to at least record it for posterity. The ground changes underfoot, firmer, less cluttered with pine needles, and you realize the trees here are more evenly spaced, almost symmetrical. It feels planned, which makes no sense in a place that supposedly grew wild for centuries. You glance to your left and catch movement in the corner of your eye, a flicker of red, like fabric. You turn your head fully and see nothing but trunks and shadows. Some visitors claim they've seen her, the girl with the ribbon darting between trees in this very part of the forest. Always at a distance, always just far enough that you can't be sure. Sometimes she's holding a small stuffed bear. Sometimes she's holding nothing at all. But she's always watching. And if you follow her, the path doesn't lead where you think it will. You keep walking until the tunnel of branches opens into a shallow dip in the ground. The hum is louder here, resonating against the slope. In the center, there's a scatter of smooth stones that don't match any rock you've seen elsewhere in the forest. The cat circles the dip once, then sits at the highest point of the rim, tail flicking. You can't shake the feeling that you've stepped into a space someone else has just vacated, and that they'll be back any second. Some say this is where the girl first appeared again, stepping out from behind one of those perfectly spaced trees. Others say it's where she disappeared the second time, because in certain versions of the story, she didn't stay. The forest, after all, has its own way of keeping track of borrowed things. The slope in front of you feels like a bowl carved into the earth by a hand that knew exactly what shape it wanted. The stones scattered across its base are too smooth, too rounded, as if they've been washed in a river that doesn't exist here. You step down carefully, your boots sending little puffs of soil into the air. The hum you noticed earlier is stronger now, still low and steady, but vibrating faintly through the soles of your feet. The most common story about this hollow says it's a meeting place, not for people, exactly, but for the forest's residents. No one can agree on what that means. Spirits, some say. Aliens, others counter. The detail that survives every version is the same. If you stand here at the right time, you're not standing alone. You pause halfway down the slope. The air is warmer here, though the sunlight filtering through the canopy hasn't changed. The hum seems to pulse now, almost matching your heartbeat. You take another step, and the sensation intensifies, not unpleasant, but insistent, as if the ground is telling you, yes, you're in the right spot. The lesser-known version of the story is more unsettling. It claims this hollow is where people arrive, not where they meet. Some who wander into Hoia Baciu find themselves here without remembering the walk that brought them. One moment, they're on a familiar path. The next, they're standing in the bold, the stones at their feet and the forest ringed around them like an audience. They speak of strange lights flickering just above the treetops, and a sense of having been relocated. Then there's the obscure theory, the one you almost have to coax out of locals. This hollow is a reset point, a place the forest uses to adjust something about you before letting you go. Some say it changes your memories, others whisper it changes you. No one agrees on how they know, and those who speak of it tend to do so in the same way they talk about an old scar, acknowledging it, but without looking at it too closely. The cat pads into the very center of the hollow and sits, tail wrapped neatly around its paws. You notice that every stone nearby seems to have a faint sheen, as though coated in something you can't quite name. Dew, maybe, though the air is dry. Joke number 1. You tell the cat you're pretty sure it's conducting some kind of ritual without your consent. Joke number 2. You ask the forest if this is its version of a waiting room. Joke number 3. You mutter that if the hum turns into music, you're leaving before the chorus. You crouch and pick up one of the stones. It's warm. Not sun warm, but body warm, like it's been held for a long time. You turn it in your hand and notice tiny grooves etched into the surface, too shallow to form a pattern, but deliberate enough to be more than random. The moment you close your fingers around it, the hum deepens, as though the forest has leaned closer. Some hikers claim that holding a stone here will give you visions, flashes of places you've never been, or memories that aren't yours. Others say it only works if you keep the stone, and that's a mistake you'll regret. A few insist the grooves match the tree rings in the forest, as if the stones and the trunks are keeping track of each other's years. You set the stone back down, careful to place it exactly where you found it. The hum doesn't stop, but it softens, becoming more of a presence than a sound. You glance around the ring of trees. For a moment, you think you see movement, just a shadow slipping between two trunks. Too quick and too tall to be the cat. The hollow feels smaller now, as though the trees have taken a subtle step inward. The air is thick with that unshakable awareness, the one that makes you straighten your spine without realizing. It's not fear. Exactly, it's the sense of being evaluated. You step back toward the slope, and the hum fades with each pace, until by the time you reach the rim, it's just a ghost of itself, more memory than sound. The cat joins you, glancing over its shoulder once at the stones before leading you onto the next stretch of path. Somewhere behind you, you think you hear the faint clink of two stones knocking together. The path beyond the stone hollow threads between birch trunks that peel like curled paper, a pale handwriting against the dark. The hum fades to a suggestion, the way a song lingers after the radio clicks off. Your shoulders loosen without your permission. The cat trots ahead, doing that casual guide thing, no backward glances now, just the confidence of someone who knows the next beat in the story. You think about cameras, because this is where they always show up in the accounts, right after the places that feel like thresholds. People come to Hoia Baciu looking for proof. Light, shadow, something with edges. In the common telling, this stretch of forest gives it to them, generously and without warning. Hikers lift their phones at nothing in particular, click, and later find a figure standing between those two bent pines. Shoulders narrow, head slight, no face, just the suggestion of posture. The detail that never quite behaves. No one remembers seeing a person standing there at the time. The forest adds the cast after the curtain call. You slow at a gap where the birches bow toward one another and pull out your phone. It wakes to a battery percentage that makes poor life choices. The lens blooms the greens into silver. You frame the path, the arch of branches, the cat positioned like a polite exclamation point, and press the shutter. The forest holds its breath exactly long enough for you to notice, and then exhales like it was just stretching. Joke number 1. You tell the phone, softly, that yes, you know you're in airplane mode, but this is forest mode, and that's basically the same. Joke number 2. You reassure the cat you won't be that person who says say cheese to a predator. Joke number 3. You inform the trees you're not signing a model release. They'll have to live with Candid. The lesser-known version of the camera legend sidesteps ghosts entirely and goes for older sky work. Decades back, a local snapped a picture here, a bright disc hanging over the crooked trees. No thunderheads, no sound, just the clean geometry of a coin where a cloud ought to be. In that telling, things don't walk into your photos from the sides, they descend into them from above. Skeptics say hoax. Enthusiasts say craft. The forest says nothing, continuing to be excellent at weather. Screens do odd things here. That's the through line even the eye rollers concede. Autofocus pumps like a heart and then decides to nap. ISO climbs without your permission. Phone clocks slip a minute sideways and then realize everyone is watching and straighten their tie. Sometimes, the shutter produces a frame with a thin translucent ribbon across it like a streamer flung from outside the picture. It's easy to blame fingers, straps, small bugs with big opinions. It's harder when the ribbon makes the shape of a shoulder as it passes the deeper trees. You shoot again, not because you expect a miracle, but because your hands want to know what your eyes forgot. The path looks harmless, the light even, the shadows reasonable. When you review the frame, the forest has tidied the scene to gallery neatness. Birch, pine, cat, the faint kind of haze that reminds you to drink water. You flick to the next shot, the one you just took, and your thumb hesitates of its own accord. There's something standing at the edge of the birch arch. The shape resolves only into attitude, a head tipped toward you like the beginning of a nod. One shoulder set a little higher, no face in the way faces like to be faces. It's not a smear or a glitch. It's the kind of absence that makes room for a person. When you look up from the screen, the gap between the trees is empty. The cat looks at the exact spot, as if the forest just did a card trick and wants credit. You breathe in, soften. That's been the rule that works tonight. The building no. The forest has taught you that. Gentle curiosity over panic. Dessert fork over steak knife. The air comes easier. You take one step forward and the smell changes. Not the wet iron of the hollow, not the ozone promise of storm, but a faint sweetness like crushed fern. The phone warms in your hand. The screen threatens to dim, then thinks better of it. There's an obscure theory people trade in late-night forums, the kind with usernames that sound like weather stations. It says Hoia Baciu isn't filling your photos with strangers. It's borrowing your camera to make a note for itself. The sensor sits, after all, on a wafer of silicates and metals that same family rocks belong to. Forest meets circuit, and the picture captures the negotiation. The figure is the signature on the memo. Here, it writes in pixels. The visitor was seen. The path was shared. You don't have to believe it. You only have to admit it's the kind of story that loves this place. The unresolved debate pulls at your sleeve anyway. Pareidolia or presence. Every collection of branches offers 3 lines that might be a shoulder. Motion Blur is an artist and has no patience for your need for specifics. On the other hand, hikers who don't trade stories still come back with the same posture in the same gap, at the same hour, under the same arc of trees. Coincidence is a big tent, but even it needs new poles sometimes. You angle for another shot, deciding to be scientific about your superstition. You plant your feet where the soil is firmer, elbows in, breath out on the press. The shutter claps politely. This time, while the preview hangs for that microsecond too long, you hear it, a soft, dry footfall behind you. The sound of a boot brushing leaf litter with intent. You turn fast enough for the birches to lean. No one there. Only the path you just walked, closing behind you the way paths do when they've finished being useful. Remember the fog ovals that blinked at your hip? The frame you just captured carries a cousin. 2 paler coins hovering where a face would be if there were a face. They aren't eyes. They are the idea of noticing. When you pinch zoom, the pixels resist. You can't make a feature that isn't willing to arrive. A variant few mention aloud, maybe because it traps a little sadness in the mouth, suggests the figure in photos is yourself, displaced by a beat. You, in the doorway between decisions. You, half a step earlier or later, still catching up. The forest prints the overlap, so you'll have to ask where you're standing in time tonight. You tuck that notion next to the story of the girl who came back unchanged, and let them be risky friends. The cat decides the experiment has met quota and resumes forward motion. You pocket the phone, where it hums with a heat that is grounded and oddly companionable, as if it just held hands with something polite. The birch is thin. The ground softens under a duff of needles. Light loosens, becoming dapple instead of rinse. Your breath finds the tempo the tunnel taught you, and persuades it to be your own this time. Joke number 4 knocks, but rules are rules. You keep it to 3 and save the extra for later. Instead, you try gratitude, which tends to play well in uncertain neighborhoods. Thank you for the picture. You tell the space between the trees, and feel only a small breeze answer, which is either weather or an agreement to leave the conversation pleasantly unresolved. Before the arch is fully behind you, you look once more without the mediation of glass. For a blink, there's the posture again, the tipped head, the higher shoulder printed not on your screen but on the negative space where 2 trunks nearly meet. It notices you noticing and does nothing at all. That, somehow, is the favor. The trail kinks left, theatrically, and delivers you toward a place where trails behave badly on purpose, the kind that loop themselves into tidy infinity signs and return you to the exact same birch arch with the exact same cat as if you'd never left. People call it the disappearing path. Your boots approve of the name in advance by scuffing a notch in the dirt, a breadcrumb you promise not to trust. The forest, generous as ever, prepares its next demonstration. You mark the path with your eyes, the way you'd mark a page with a thumbnail. There's the birch with the split trunk, there's the pine that leans as if deciding to sit, there's your own small scuff in the dirt from 2 minutes ago. The trail should arc left, then right, then spill you towards softer ground where moss makes low islands. It should, it doesn't. Hoia Baciu's disappearing path has a tidy reputation in the common telling. Walk 10 minutes and you'll arrive where you started, even if you swore you were moving straight. People chalk it up to the forest's mirrored corridors, trunks repeating at regular intervals, branches echoing one another. A visual chorus line that convinces your head that progress happened. When you realize you're back at your own boot scuff, the forest is polite enough not to say, "Told you so." The path isn't gone, exactly. It's folded. You try the sensible tricks. Pick a fixed point, there's a tall beech with a lightning scar, and walk toward it. Count your steps. Keep the sun, or what passes for it under the canopy, to the same shoulder. You do all of these with the mental neatness of someone who once passed a wilderness first aid course and has never recovered from how proud that made them. The beech steps sideways. Your step count discovers jazz. The light above turns from consistent to editorial. The lesser-known version of the path's legend isn't about circles. It's about edits. Trails thin as you watch them, narrowing to deer traces, to suggestion, to nothing, then reappear 3 arm lengths away, as if the forest had drafted a new version and pushed it live without patch notes. You're not lost, you're being rerouted. Hikers report seeing their own footprints veer away from them in the duff, like a sentence-changing tense. It sounds like exaggeration until you check the soft needles by your scuff and watch a second pair of impressions set in beside yours. Same tread pattern, same stride, offset by a hand's breadth, as if your earlier self walked with a patient twin. Obscure theory time. 1. The map nerds love. Magnetic declination and microtopography conspire here like cordial villains. The hill's mineral veins play footsie with your internal compass, while subtle dips keep returning your stride to the same comfortable contour. Translation: you pick the path of least resistance over and over, and the forest applauds by handing you your own beginning as a finale. Pair that with pattern-matching eyes, we love a symmetrical grove, and voila! Your brain auto-completes a route the ground never consented to. It's a kind theory. It makes you feel less haunted and more human. The cat sits down in the middle of everything, with the bureaucratic poise of an official seal. Tail around paws, head up, waiting. You take this as your cue to try another experiment. Remember the pebble and circle routine you used back in the corridor of shifting walls at Waverly? You kneel, draw a neat ring in the dust with one finger, place a small pine cone in the center, and set your intention like a lantern. Straight on, no flourish. Joke number 1. You inform the forest you're starting a pilot program in staying put while moving forward. Joke number 2. You tell the cat it's getting promoted to Director of Route Integrity with full benefits, snacks. Joke number 3. You promise your boots a raise if they stop freelancing. You choose a landmark that can't lie, a tangled route that lifts like a question under the soil, and angle toward it, counting in a low voice. 20 steps, 30, 40. The route arrives, honest as an address. You pivot to find the next fixed thing, a broken branch shaped like a tuning fork, and make for that. The rhythm works. Your chest settles into the slow tunnel breath the death chute taught you, a metronome in ribs and road. You keep the pattern until the forest, with excellent timing, offers a lesson in humility. You come to a fork that wasn't on any of your mental maps. The left is generous and obvious. The right is narrow as a thread, but the air over it feels cooler, like a door kept ajar. Your practical voice votes left. The part of you that has been enjoying weird math tonight votes right. The cat chooses neither, trotting into the brush between both, where no path had the decency to exist a breath ago. Branches flex barely enough to make room. They spring back behind the tail, as if embarrassed to have been helpful. You follow the cat's middle way and emerge into a small, ringed glade you'd swear wasn't there from any angle. The ground is clean of litter in a tidy circle, as if swept. Not the barren clearing, this one holds life, but it holds it evenly. Ferns placed like commas, mushrooms like ellipses, the sort of curated random you see in gardens where the gardener is a perfectionist. At the far edge stands a twin-trunked pine that bends toward itself to make a rough arch cousin to the doorways people photograph and swear weren't present 5 minutes before. There's a motif in hiker tales that lands here. When the path vanishes, a doorway appears. Walk through, and the trail restiches around you with better manners for a while. Some call it a kindness, the forest correcting its own prank. Others call it the trap's smile. The unresolved debate is what happens if you refuse the arch. Do you loop forever, a slow carousel among trees? Or does the forest shrug and let you out the long way, tired and a day older? You stand under the bent trunks and look back. From this angle, the track you busted through closes. Green hands overlapping, an excellent forgery of never. Look forward again. The ground resumes its idea of a trail, faint but legible, like handwriting that's chosen legibility over flourish. You turn your palms outward in a thank you didn't know you'd learned. The air cools your skin and moves on. People talk about time slipping here too. Watches lag a few minutes, then jump. Phone clocks disagree with each other like siblings. The common fix is the oldest. Pick a pace and keep it. If your feet tell time, the trees can argue with your watch all night. They can't argue with 4 miles per hour. You fall into a soft march, not hurrying, not dawdling, a lullaby of steps. The cat matches you half a pace ahead, a small pendulum with whiskers. A sound arrives soft, then definite, the quick clatter of something light striking wood. You stop. The forest stops with you, just to be polite. Another clack, this time behind and to the left, where your original scuff should be if the world obeyed chapters. You pivot slow. There it is, the scuff, intact, beside your pine cone in its circle, 30 yards from where you stand, though you walked 100 since making it. The pine cone sits exactly where you placed it. The dust is undisturbed around the ring, as if a glass dome protected it. The clack comes again, this time from a branch above your head. A pine cone drops, lands outside your ring with the precision of a teacher setting chalk on a tray, and rolls to tap your boot. Once. You laugh, a soft, decent sound that doesn't need to be brave. The cat blinks approval. The forest, satisfied you got the message, resumes being a forest. You leave the first pine cone in its museum circle and pocket the second, a small, round reminder that sometimes the straightest path is the one you are offered, not the one you drew. There's a quieter, lonelier variant of the vanishing trail story that people tell only when the fire is low. Some walkers never find the doorway, never get the dropped hint. They camp where they are, wake to the same bend of trees, the same reliable scuff, the same patient path that insists on beginning. On the third dawn, they pick a tree and follow it in a straight line, climbing over and under everything in their way, refusing the idea of trails at all. It works. It always works. The forest respects stubbornness when it's tidy. You file that under emergency methods and choose, for tonight, the polite road. The arch carries you into a corridor of younger saplings where light can find you again. The trunks stop repeating themselves like a trick. Each carries its own grammar of knots. Your shoulders let down a notch. You check the position of the beach scar and, miracle of small mercies, it holds where it ought to. The beach doesn't step sideways this time. You do, around a route that points like a signpost toward a story with rain in it. Because that's where the disappearing path ends and another oddity begins. A patch of weather that belongs to no cloud, a private drizzle that finds only you under a clear sky. The cat gives itself a brisk shake in anticipation, which is either foreshadowing or routine maintenance. Either way, your next step puts you where drops sometimes fall without permission. And the forest, charmed by its own sense of humor, raises a curtain you didn't see until it opened. The air changes before the first drop touches you. It's not the cool slide that comes before a normal rain, it's thicker, denser. Like the space between you and the trees has been filled with something invisible but tangible. A soft resistance you notice with your skin before your mind catches up. The cat stops just ahead, ears twitching as if it's listening to a sound you can't quite hear. The most common telling of this place is simple enough. You walk into a patch of the forest and it starts raining, but only on you. No clouds above, no damp earth under the nearest tree. Just a gentle drizzle that begins and ends in the space you occupy. People describe it as playful, almost like a prank. You step forward, it follows. Step back, it stops. Some laugh it off, others leave with a shiver that has nothing to do with temperature. You take another step, and it begins soft taps on your jacket, tiny cool points on your hairline, a pattern of droplets that seem to fall from nowhere. The cat shakes itself once and trots just outside your bubble of weather, perfectly dry. You look up. Above you is the same fractured canopy as everywhere else. Branches tangled, sunlight in patches, no sign of mist or cloud. The lesser-known version of the tale adds a strange detail. In those accounts, the rain isn't water at all. A few hikers have caught the drops on their palms and swear they felt more like static tiny shocks, harmless but unnerving. Some insist the sensation leaves a faint metallic taste in the mouth, like biting on a coin. It's why they call it the ozone pocket in certain circles. Skeptics say it's just pollen or debris shaken loose by wind, but the wind here is still. Then there's the obscure theory less popular because it requires accepting that the forest might be interacting with you directly. This one claims the rain happens when the forest is checking in on you, marking your presence in a way it can read later. The droplets, they say, aren't for you at all. They're for the trees. A kind of passing signature. Walk away from the patch, and your signature stays behind, stored in the soil like a pressed flower. Joke number 1. You mutter to the forest that it's a little rude to spill a drink on you without asking first. Joke number 2. You tell the cat you're fine with rain, but you draw the line at hail. Joke number 3. You remind whatever's responsible that this isn't a car wash, and you're not paying for the deluxe package. You cup your hands and catch a few drops. They feel like water cool, weightless, but they evaporate faster than they should, gone before they could even trickle between your fingers. You try again, same thing. The ground beneath you darkens slightly where the drops land, but the moment you step outside the invisible perimeter, it's as dry as it was when you entered. Some visitors have tried outrunning it, sprinting to see if the rain would follow. It does, in perfect synchronization, stopping only the instant you cross whatever unseen border defines the patch. Others have tried stepping in together, only to find that the rain will choose one person, ignoring the other entirely. A few rare but memorable claim the patch has moved to meet them, as though it were seeking them out specifically. You step out to where the cat waits, shaking your shoulders to flick off the damp. The moment you clear the unseen line, the rain cuts off completely. You glance back, nothing. No drops, no shimmer in the air, no sound. It's like it never happened. You start forward again, but the path here feels slightly different, narrower, lined with younger growth, the air cooler in a way that reminds you of early morning. You think about the girl with the red ribbon, the hollow of stones, the figure in your photograph. Each moment has been a kind of check, like the forest is moving you through a quiet list. This sense, this sound, this choice. Some hikers say the rain is the last soft warning before you reach parts of the forest that don't want you there. That if you ignore it, walk on, without acknowledging it, you'll find the air heavier, the light sharper, the sounds behind you closer. Others think the rain means the opposite, that you've been cleared to pass through places most visitors never reach. Whatever it means, you keep moving. The drizzle patch stays behind, the sound of it light, quick fades into the general hush of the forest, until you can almost convince yourself you imagined it. Almost. Up ahead, the trees part just enough to reveal two trunks leaning toward each other, their tops tangled like hands clasped above your head. A doorway, the forest's way of marking the next shift. You've seen enough of these by now to know they're not accidents. This one feels deliberate, like a stage set for the next act. The cat passes under first, its tail flicking as it disappears into the shadow between trunks. You follow, and the temperature drops another notch. Somewhere beyond this arch, the forest has decided to show you something else. The arch swallows you into a hush that feels heavier than the quiet outside. It's not silence, exactly. There's still the faint rustle of leaves, the soft shifting of branches, but it's concentrated, like the sound has been thickened and pressed against your ears. The light is dimmer here too, despite the canopy being no denser than before. You barely have time to notice when it happens the feeling of a push, not a hard shove, not enough to trip you, but a clear, deliberate pressure between your shoulder blades, as though someone behind you wants you to keep moving. Your first thought is wind. Your second thought is that there is no wind. In the most common telling, this part of Hoia Baciu is where hikers feel escorted deeper into the forest. The push can be faint or firm, sometimes even tugging at sleeves or packs. It's usually accompanied by the sense that you're being led somewhere, not dragged, but guided. Some people find it comforting, as though a hand is keeping them from straying. Others don't. You turn slightly, looking back at the arch you just passed under. Nothing moves. The trunks stand still, their tops interlaced. The cat is watching you from several paces ahead, its green eyes just catching a thread of light. Another push so faint you might have missed it if you hadn't been expecting it. The lesser-known version of this legend is far stranger. It says the push isn't coming from behind you, it's coming from in front of you. That it's not a shove, but a pull, disguised by your brain to make sense of it. Like you're being drawn forward by something ahead, but your body translates it as pressure from behind. People who tell this version often add that the sensation stops the instant you resist. They say the forest doesn't force you, it just tests whether you'll follow. Then there's the obscure theory, the one you don't hear unless someone's had a few drinks by a fire. It claims the push is the forest's way of adjusting your position inside a larger arrangement, like moving a chess piece into place. You might not know what the game is, but the forest does. Joke number 1. You tell the forest you appreciate the personal trainer energy, but your cardio's fine, thanks. Joke number 2. You ask the cat if it bribed the trees to keep you moving. Joke number 3. You mutter to yourself that if you feel a pat on the back next, you're leaving a 1-star review. The push comes again, just enough to urge you forward. You let it, taking careful steps. The ground here is soft, the soil rich and dark, your boots sinking slightly with each movement. The smell changes, less pine now, more earth, damp and sweet. You can almost taste it in the air. Some hikers who've experienced this claim the pushing stops when you reach a specific point. That's the part that unnerves them, the idea that the forest has a destination in mind. They talk about arriving in small clearings, at odd rock formations, even at that barren circle where nothing grows, as if whatever's guiding them has finished its task and lets go. And then there's the detail that doesn't make it into most retellings. The pressure never comes when you're walking out of the forest, only deeper in. You try something. You stop completely, letting your weight settle into your heels. The forest waits. You wait. Long enough that the cat sits down, tail flicking. Then it happens, not a push this time, but a presence, close enough to raise goosebumps along your arms. It lingers for a breath, and then the faint pressure returns, firm enough to coax a single step. You take it, and another. The feeling doesn't intensify, but it doesn't fade either. It stays with you, steady as a shadow, until the trees ahead open into a small hollow where the air feels strange, charged, like the moments before lightning. The cat walks into the center of the hollow and sits, as it always does at these waypoints. The pushing stops. Just like that, the presence behind you is gone, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves overhead. Some say this is the forest's way of delivering you to where you're meant to be. Others think it's nothing more than uneven ground and an overactive imagination. But as you stand in that hollow, feeling the weight of stillness around you, you can't help wondering if you'd refuse to follow, where would you be now? You stand in the hollow, waiting for something, anything, to declare itself. The air here feels heavier, as if it's pressing down just enough to make your breathing slower. The canopy above is broken in patches, letting in pale shards of light that don't seem to match the time of day. It's here that your watch gives up first. The second hand stutters, pauses, then jumps forward in a little skip. You glance at your phone for a more reliable reading, but it's no better. The numbers blink, freeze for a heartbeat, then carry on as if nothing happened. The battery percentage dips a full point in the span of seconds. In the common telling, this is the part of Hoia Baciu where time itself goes strange. Watches stop or lose minutes, phones die without warning, compasses spin lazily. People talk about shadows that don't match their sources, trees whose shapes are right, but whose shadows lean in the wrong direction. Sometimes it's subtle, just enough to make you question your own sense of things. Other times, hikers swear the sun itself moves too quickly overhead, sliding toward evening in the space of an hour. You look down at your own shadow. It's there, perfectly obedient, but when you turn, it turns a hair slower than you do, as though it's thinking about it first. The lesser-known version of this legend claims that the time disturbances aren't random. They happen on a pattern roughly every 7 to 9 minutes, like an unseen clock ticking in the forest's own rhythm. Some have tried to map it, to walk only during safe intervals, but the theory falls apart because no two groups can agree on the timing. The forest keeps its schedule to itself. Then there's the obscure theory, the kind you don't read in guidebooks. It says the forest doesn't bend time at all, it bends you. That the sudden loss or gain of minutes is just your mind being pulled ahead or dropped back without your body noticing. You're still in the same moment, just not the version of yourself that began the walk. Joke number 1. You tell your watch that if it wanted a break, it could have just asked. Joke number 2. You tell the cat you'll pay it extra if it keeps track of the time for you. Joke number 3. You inform the trees that they could have at least left a clock somewhere for dramatic effect. The cat circles once in the center of the hollow, then flops down with the ease of something not bothered by physics. You stand for a few more moments, listening. Every so often, there's a faint metallic click in the air, like the sound of a camera shutter, but distant. You spin toward the noise, but there's nothing there. Some hikers say the clicking is part of the time slips, that it's the moment you're captured, held still while the forest rearranges you. Others think it's just branches snapping in the wind, though here, there's barely a breeze. You take a step forward, and the air feels lighter. Your watch ticks normally again. The numbers on your phone are steady. The hollow behind you remains in place, the light inside it still just a little too pale. You have the urge to step back in, to see if it happens again, but you let it go. The forest doesn't repeat its tricks for curiosity alone. Ahead, the path narrows, curving slightly uphill. At the crest, you see it a slow, steady glow weaving between the trees. It's not the light of the sun breaking through leaves. This is smaller, deliberate, pulsing, faintly as it moves. Whatever waits up there is no trick of your watch or shadow. It's moving on its own. The glow drifts like a lantern on a breath of wind, except there's no wind here. It's not a beam of sunlight, not a flashlight. The light is round, warm, and alive, in a way that makes you think of fireflies magnified 100-fold. It pulses dim, bright, dim again as it threads its way through the spaces between trunks. The most common version of this story is told with a kind of reverence, the floating orb. Visitors describe it as a sphere of pale yellow or white light, anywhere from the size of an apple to that of a basketball. It moves slowly, never in a straight line, and seems to react to the presence of people either drawing closer or slipping away, depending on something. No one agrees on what triggers which response. You take a careful step forward. The orb pauses, as if it's noticed you. It doesn't vanish, it just holds there, pulsing faintly, waiting. The cat sits perfectly still, eyes reflecting the glow in tiny mirrors. The lesser-known telling says there are two kinds of orbs in Hoia Baciu. The first, the kind in the common tale, drift gently and don't approach unless you approach them. The second kind are sharper, quicker, darting through the trees like sparks. Those, people say, don't want to be seen. If you catch sight of one, it will flash and vanish almost instantly, leaving behind a faint smell of ozone. It's the drifting ones you can watch for minutes, even follow if you dare. Then there's the obscure theory, the one that makes skeptics shift in their seats. This version claims the orbs aren't lights at all, but eyes. Not in the literal sense, but as extensions of something else, something that exists deeper in the forest, using the orbs to see you without being seen itself. In that telling, the pulsing isn't random. It's a signal, a kind of coded conversation you're just not equipped to understand. Joke number 1. You whisper to the cat that you've accidentally walked into the world's weirdest porch light. Joke number 2. You tell the orb you don't do autographs. Joke number 3. You suggest that if it's a drone, it's missing a great opportunity to sell merch. The orb moves again, gliding sideways between two tall oaks, then slowing until it hovers at roughly your chest height. You can't see any structure inside it, no wires, no wings, just a uniform glow, soft-edged like it's made of mist. When you take another step forward, it drifts back, keeping the same distance between you. Some hikers have tried chasing the orbs, claiming they lead to specific places in the forest, hidden clearings, strange rock formations, even the infamous Barren Circle. Others say they're nothing but tricks of the light, reflections from outside the forest distorted by the canopy. The problem with that theory is that the orbs have been seen deep inside, far from any roads or lights. You pause. The orb pulses faster for a moment, then slower again, like a heartbeat calming down. The cat finally moves, trotting forward a few steps and stopping just inside the orb's path. For an instant, the glow intensifies, bathing the fur along its back in pale gold. The cat doesn't flinch. Some claim that if an orb passes close enough, it can leave a kind of residue, tiny shimmering flecks that cling to skin or clothing, fading after a few hours. A handful of visitors have kept those flecks in jars, only to find them gone the next morning, the glass clean as if nothing had been there at all. You decide not to follow when the orb begins to drift away. Instead, you watch as it weaves slowly into the trees until its light blurs into the dimness, then vanishes altogether. The forest exhales around you, and somewhere, just beyond where the orb disappeared, you hear it laughter, light, playful, and impossible to place. Not close enough to startle you, but near enough that you know it's meant to be heard. The laughter skips across the trunks like stones on a pond light, bright, and just a little out of time with itself. It's the kind of sound children make when they're about to be scolded for running indoors. Except there are no hallways here and no children you can see. The cat lifts its head, ears pivoting, then turns in a slow circle as if to say, "Pick a direction. I'll pretend it's that one." In the most common version of this Hoia Baciu tale, the laughter comes in loops. You hear it just ahead, you follow, and it scoots sideways into another stand of trees. You stop, and it does too, only to pick up again behind you, as if the forest has a sense of humor and a decent set of sneakers. Witnesses describe it as unmistakably young, the giggle and gasp cadence of kids playing tag. Every language hears "come on" in it, no matter what words the brain insists on. You take a step, and the sound obligingly flits one copse over. Another step, and it's 3 paces behind your left shoulder, which is impressive, because the leaf litter there hasn't stirred, and your own shadow didn't notice. The cat gives the approximate feline sigh for, "Fine." Will play along and pads forward with the deliberate stealth of someone humorously pretending to stalk a punchline. The lesser-known variant takes all the fun out of it in exactly the way you'd expect. It says the laughter isn't childlike at all. It only borrows that register because it knows you'll chase it. Get close enough, and the sound drops, voice deepening mid-giggle, like a recording slowed by a heavy thumb on the reel. Those who've heard the shift claim the air thickens in the same instant, as if the trees have leaned in to listen harder. Others swear the laughter doesn't descend so much as spread, widening until it seems to come from the ground itself. The invitation becomes a boundary. Stay or don't. The forest isn't negotiating. And then there's the obscure interpretation, passed quietly among local hikers who are mothers and grandmothers and therefore constitutionally unimpressed by disembodied sound effects. According to them, the laughter belongs to the forest, not to anything in it. It's a pressure valve noise, the audible version of wind slipping through a dozen tangles at once, not work acoustics producing a tune your brain gift wraps as kids. The tree ladies, as you'll think of them now, will pat your arm and say not to worry. The woods are telling themselves a joke you weren't here to hear the setup for. You like the kindness in that, even if it doesn't explain why your skin has decided goosebumps are couture. Joke number 1. You tell the air you're happy to join the game, but you do expect clear rules, snacks, and a trophy shaped like a pine cone. Joke number 2. You inform the cat that if this devolves into hide and seek, you're counting with your eyes open, because you've seen how that ends around here. Joke number 3. You warn the trees you're filing a formal noise complaint unless the laughter agrees to harmonize in D minor strict house style tonight. The sound scoots again, this time toward a low dip, where moss drapes stones like shawls. You follow to the edge and stop because you've learned something invaluable. Hoia Baciu rewards restraint. You stand, hands quiet at your sides, breathing the slow way the death tunnel taught you, and let the laughter make the next move. It does a little figure 8 among the trunks, arrives at the far rim, and yes, grows quieter. Not farther, just dimmer, as if someone's cupped a palm around it. There's a well-traveled anecdote about this hollow, the sort whispered at bonfires when the wood is down to gray, and the last marshmallow is more theory than food. A pair of friends heard the laughter here and decided to play along. One clambered down, arms spread in that exaggerated adult way people use to impress kids. The other stayed up top for the vantage point. Halfway down, the first friend stopped and said, "Did you hear that? It called my name." The one on the rim heard no name, only a new thread of giggling, mocking, they thought, or maybe just delighted with itself. When the friend climbed back up, both swore the other's face was blurred for a handful of seconds. The way faces were in the fog features almost, then not. They left an apple at the base of a birch and walked out by a longer route, talking too loudly about weather. You test the hollow with a soft step. The moss presses back like good upholstery. No branches snap. The laughter slides to your right, then drops into a hiss like a kettle coming off boil playful still, but transformed. You remember the girl in the red ribbon and wonder whether this noise ever pretended to be her, or whether she learned to tuck her giggle into the forest so the two braided and neither could be called a lie. An unresolved mystery follows this story like a patient dog. When people record here, audio picks up more voices than ears, remember. Phones capture overlapping strands, a high chatter, yes, but also a low murmur at the edge of hearing. Is it wind? Is it your jacket's fabric articulating your nerves? Or is it the chorus the lesser-known variant warned you about? The laugh that's older than childhood wearing a younger face for convenience. Engineers will talk about frequency bands and bandwidth, and the way microphones love to invent ghosts in the 1.3 kHz range. Folks around the cafe will nod and sip, and tell you about the time their recorder said, "Tag you're it," in 4 voices at once. You try courtesy. Not playing today, you say, keeping your tone at bedtime story volume. But thanks for the offer. The sound pauses again, and then, because any good host respects a clear RSVP, it retreats to the far slope and thins to almost birds, almost wind, almost nothing. The cat approves this boundary with a satisfied blink and a brief, ceremonial loaf. You climb back to the rim, and the light improves by a polite degree. It's as if the canopy has leaned apart to say noted. You stand taller without deciding to, shoulders finding their unhunch, and the laughter, far off now, becomes a texture rather than a message. You can live with texture. Remember the camera figure at the birch arch, the posture without a face? You glance at your phone out of habit more than hope and find it awake, battery sulking but alive. On the last photo, the trees lean like they did. The cat is mid-step, nothing else. You almost swipe to check the one before, and don't, because you've also learned this: not every answer arrives better by glass. Sometimes, your best evidence is the way your breathing behaves. Tonight it behaves like it trusts you. A quieter, odder variant of the laughter story clings to you on the walk out of the hollow. Some hikers hum back. Just a little 3 notes, nothing fancy. The forest, on those nights, is said to mimic the pattern later, weaving it through its own vocal cords, needles, grass, branch. The idea is ridiculous enough to be true. You hum 3 gentle notes you'd be happy to hear again in a different mouth. Down a step, up 2, home. The air takes them and does nothing obvious with them at all, which feels like both a refusal and a rain check. You angle toward a gentler slope, where the ground remembers footsteps in a way your boots find reassuring. The cat takes point, tail at half-mast, a flag of truce or a metronome. Take your pick. Somewhere off to your left, the laughter retries itself, smaller now, or farther, or less interested. It breaks once into a sound you could mistake for words if you were here for that. You are not tonight. Past a stand of young spruce, the forest loosens its jaw around sound and returns your usual palate. A woodpecker testing a trunk, a fly changing its mind, your own jacket stitching soft weather down your sides. The path ahead is ordinary for 3 steps, 4. Then the light leans cooler, and the trees look taller in that particular way that says someone is watching from above. It won't be the orb this time. It will be something that prefers a vantage point and the patience of statues. The laughter fades behind you like the end of a swing's arc, and the next note hovers in the air, asking if you'll sing it. You feel it before you see it, that faint prickling along your scalp, the one that tells you something is holding still, just long enough to be noticed. The canopy above is layered in shades of green and shadow, the branches swaying so slightly they could be painted onto the sky, and then you spot it. High up, balanced among the crooked limbs of an old beech, is a figure. At first, it blends into the bark, tall and lean, arms at its sides. It doesn't sway with the branch, it doesn't shift its weight, it just is. The most common telling of this Hoia Baciu story calls it the Watcher on the Hill. Though hill is a polite exaggeration, the land here rises only slightly. People claim to see a man-shaped silhouette in the treetops, taller than any person should be able to stand, sometimes with limbs too long to match its body. It doesn't move until you blink, and when you open your eyes, it's in a different position, still motionless, still watching. You blink. It hasn't moved. Or maybe it has, just enough to tilt its head in a way that feels like punctuation. The cat crouches, tail low but not puffed, watching the same spot with laser precision. The lesser-known version insists this isn't a who, but a what. Some hikers swear it's not standing on the branches at all, it's growing from them, like a malformed limb or a human-shaped knot of wood that happens to have a neck. They say its head follows you without the rest of the body moving, and if you try to circle beneath it, the head never stops facing forward. Then there's the obscure theory, the one locals don't tell unless you've been out here long enough to earn it. They say the Watcher isn't separate from the forest, it is the forest. A single awareness, distributed through roots and leaves, concentrating itself into a shape you can recognize. Not because it wants to be known, but because it wants you to know you're known. Joke number 1. You tell the cat it's rude to stare, even if you were here first. Joke number 2. You wave up at the figure and say, "Love your work, big fan." Joke number 3. You wonder aloud if you should ask it for a weather report, since it has the best view in the forest. The figure shifts. You can't swear it moved, but it feels moved like the branch it's on dips imperceptibly under new weight. The light around it changes too, a slight darkening as though a cloud passed overhead, but the rest of the forest remains bright. Some hikers claim that if you stare too long, you lose track of time. Minutes pass without you realizing, and when you finally glance away, the figure is gone, but you'll notice something new on your person. A leaf tucked into your collar. a thin streak of sap on your hand. Once, according to a story told in the cafe, someone found a tiny scrap of paper wedged into their watch band. It was blank. You shift your weight, testing whether the watcher will react. It doesn't. Or maybe it does, and the change is so subtle your eyes can't catch it. The cat finally makes a decision, padding forward until it's directly under the beech tree. It sits, tail curling neatly around its paws, and looks up. For a long moment, nothing happens. Then, the watcher leans not much, just a degree or two, but it's enough that its head is directly above the cat's. The air between them feels thick, like heat mirage, though the temperature hasn't changed. Some people believe that if the watcher chooses to follow you, you'll hear no footsteps, no rustle of leaves. Instead, you'll feel the faintest sense of company on the edges of your perception, never close enough to touch, but close enough to catch in the corner of your eye. And when you finally leave the forest, you might see it one last time, perched impossibly high in a tree near the edge, watching until you're out of sight. You don't wait for that ending. With a polite nod upward, you step past the beach, and the figure stays where it is, or, at least, that's what you decide to believe. The cat follows, tail flicking once, as if to signal that the exchange is over. The path narrows again, curving into a stretch where the air drops sharply in temperature. Ahead, a shadow dip in the earth exhales a chill that doesn't belong to this season. The dip ahead looks ordinary enough at first, just a shallow trough in the forest floor, hemmed in by roots and low brush. But as you approach, the air pouring out of it wraps around your ankles like water from a deep well, cold, damp, and carrying the faint metallic tang of stone long hidden from the sun. The most common story says this is one of the forest's cold pockets. They're scattered throughout Hoia Baciu, patches where the temperature can drop 10 or even 20 degrees without warning. People walking through them describe their breath fogging in the air, their fingers stiffening, even frost forming on nearby leaves in the wrong season. The cold never lasts far beyond the boundaries of these pockets, but while you're in one, the chill settles into your bones. You step down into the trough. Instantly, the warmth of your own skin feels like it's retreating. The cat hesitates at the rim, clearly unimpressed, then hops in with the stubborn air of someone determined to prove a point. The lesser-known version of this tale says these cold spots aren't random, they're the sites of old fires. Not the kind that rage through a forest, but small, contained blazes that burned for a purpose, to send someone off or to call something in. The theory goes that the cold is what's left behind when all the heat is spent, a lingering emptiness that the forest can't or won't refill. Then there's the obscure theory, the one whispered like gossip. It claims the cold is alive, that it moves from place to place, choosing where to settle. In this telling, the chill isn't a leftover, it's a visitor, slipping through the forest in slow, deliberate currents, pausing here and there to see what wanders in. If it likes you, it stays a little longer. Joke number 1. You tell the cat this is the forest's idea of air conditioning. Joke number 2. You mutter that at least the mosquitoes won't follow you in here. Joke number 3. You warn the trough that if it's going to keep this up, you'll need a mug of cocoa. You crouch, brushing your fingertips along the leaf litter. The ground is damp, but not wet enough to explain the cold. You notice a thin crust of frost clinging to the underside of a root, delicate enough to crumble at a touch. The cat's breath is visible now, puffing in tiny clouds as it sniffs the base of a moss-covered rock. Some hikers claim that standing perfectly still in a cold pocket will eventually reveal its center, a point where the air feels heavier, like the exact middle of a shadow. They say if you stand there too long, you'll hear sounds that don't belong to the moment. Footsteps from the past, murmured voices in a language you can't quite place, the faint clink of metal against stone. You try it. The air tightens around you, your ears almost popping as if you've changed altitude. For just a moment, you think you hear the rhythmic scrape of something being sharpened, slow and steady. The sound is gone before you can decide if it's real. Some people walk out of these cold pockets with no memory of crossing them, only to find they've lost half an hour on the far side. Others swear the opposite. They step in, linger, and leave to find only seconds have passed. No one can explain why, and no two experiences are alike. You take a slow step upward toward the far rim. The temperature rises with each pace, until by the time you crest the edge, the cold has vanished as completely as if it never existed. The cat shakes itself and trots ahead, clearly relieved. Behind you, the trough holds its breath. Ahead, you catch sight of something else entirely, a pale, flat surface breaking the rhythm of trees. It's the corner of a structure, half hidden by vines and shadows. At first, you think you found a building pale corner, straight lines where the forest prefers curves. But when you ease closer, the wall resolves into stacked stones sunk into moss, the suggestion of a low rectangle long since surrendered to roots. Not a house, more like a shelter, or the ghost of one. The air here is ordinary for 3 breaths. On the 4th, it changes. A thin ribbon of wind threads the ruin, rises along the stones, and turns into a sound that doesn't belong to weather. It's not loud. You'd call it a whine if it didn't have vowels. It's the pitch of a teapot left on too long, shaped under the tongue into almost words. The cat stops with one paw lifted and looks at you like, if you're about to blame this on me, we're leaving our partnership in a healthy place. Welcome to the Screaming Wind. In the well-known telling, this part of Hoia Baciu sings when the air comes from the north. Gusts rake the gullies, the ruined pens, the hollow trunks, and pull a voice out of the forest, a thin, keening thread that climbs and falls, phrases that seem to imitate human panic without ever resolving into language. Locals say this is the old pasture's complaint. Others say it's the shepherd calling to sheep that don't answer anymore. People who filmed it bring back audio full of shivering harmonics. Microphones carry terror even when your ears only carry unease. You step into the rectangle and the tone shifts, thin as a hair, the note shaving itself into a higher key. The stones here are notched by decades of soft weather. A few have drilled themselves into flutes. You crouch, hold your palm an inch from a thumb-wide hole, and the wind spills around your skin with the delicacy of a whispered comment. It makes a second note, lower, slots against the first, and the ruin begins to harmonize with itself. That's when the vowels start soft ahs strung in a line and pulled taut until they sharpen into a plea your brain very much wants to translate. The lesser-known version of the legend isn't about ruins at all, but about trees with broken hearts, literal hollows, where a branch tore and healed into an O. When the gusts are right, those O's become throats. Walk past a row of them and the forest talks, each trunk voicing one syllable so the line becomes a sentence. People swear they've heard their names this way, each letter delivered by a different tree. Skeptics point out that once you expect phonemes, your ears are eager employees. Still, they concede the chorus effect is real. It's hard to argue with a grove that organizes pitch by the foot. Then there's the obscure theory, the one that would rather insult your nerves than praise a ghost. Aeolian tones, it says. Infrasound. The wind across these particular gaps and gullies creates frequencies below what you can consciously hear. Those low waves rattle the body, trigger alertness, nausea, grief, whatever note your biology is tuned for tonight. On top of that, higher harmonics ride the edges of stone and wood to make the audible thread. The words are your mind's neat handwriting across a page of squiggles. Kindly translation: the forest isn't screaming, your fascia is. The wind climbs a little and the tone follows, twisting into a minor interval you recognize from the laugh's last, farther echoes. A pang lands between your shoulder blades where the pushing hand stood earlier. You breathe the tunnel breath and the pitch responds, flattening out, becoming less urgent. That earns a small, involuntary smile. Joke number 1. You tell the ruin you're flattered it modulates to your respiratory settings. Joke number 2. You assure the cat that if the wind starts demanding encores, you're hiring it an agent. Joke number 3. You tell the stones you'll leave a tip if they take requests. D minor is house style, after all. You step sideways and the ruin turns the page. New holes, new song. Here the call wavers into something close to lyric, a rise and fall that invites meaning. You think just for a blink, you hear 2 syllables that could be your name. Your brain lunges to oblige. The next gust converts it to nonsense, a soft, watery consonant that makes you think of polished pebbles in a glass jar. The cat blinks slowly, which you accept as peer review. An unresolved mystery clings to this wind like a scarf. Why does it stop cold when you speak to it? Hikers report that a single word, enough, spoken softly, or a plain, no more, causes the tone to fail, like a breath run out. Others say the opposite. A greeting strengthens it, organizes the vowels, stacks them until they almost rhyme. 2 camps, both confident, both generous with anecdote. You try the smallest version, a hum on one note. The wind leans into it, warps around your pitch, and for 3 heartbeats duets. It's not language, it's cooperation. Then, the gust drops, and the ruin forgets you. Remember the fog's ring that slipped over your shoulder like a scarf? The wind borrows that trick, sliding a cool ribbon along your neck, threading the hollow behind your ear. It's intimate without being unkind. Your eyes water the way they do in sudden weather. In the water, the ruin's edges waver just enough to suggest someone standing in the gap the wall once filled. Tall, shoulders set, no features, just posture, like the figure in your camera near the birch arch. You blink, and the posture collapses back into stone and shadow. Some swear the screaming wind is prophetic, come here on a gusty evening, and it will tell you what the forest intends for you. Not in words exactly, but in cadence. Urgent, stay away. Gentle, come. Broken, turn back. Long and even, you'll pass through. Folklore loves classification. So do nervous systems. You listen with your skin and ask, which am I tonight? The tone settles into even, then falters on a hitch of air, an honest stutter you've heard before in your own voice when you're about to say something you're not sure you should. The cat yawns, which you interpret as, don't overfit the model. A quieter variant says the wind belongs to the missing. Not the dramatic vanishings, just the everyday lost moments, the watch seconds that slipped in section 11, the girl's uncounted years, the laughter that forgot the last note. The ruin gathers those leftovers and plays them back as weather. When it catches enough, it sings. It's an ache of a theory, maybe too pretty to be true, but it sits well beside the apple on a stump, the pine cone in your pocket, the way the forest keeps making room for acknowledgement. You move to the leeward side, and the sound thins to the breath of a bottle. Here, the tone is lower, the vowels wider. It feels older, less like a warning, more like a chant. Your shoulders go down a notch, you weren't aware they'd crept up. The ruin makes a final phrase, 2 notes, then a third. The exact 3 you hummed back in the laughter hollow. Down a step, up 2, home. You could call that coincidence. You could also file it under rain check accepted. The gust collapses. Silence returns in layers. First the quiet of no wind, then the distant pick of a woodpecker that has very punctual hours. Then your jacket's soft friction reminding you that you are arranged in a shape and that shape is fine. The ruin becomes stones again. The air forgets to be a throat. You step out of the rectangle and the forest resumes its ordinary grammar. The path beyond looks obliging for a gracious stretch, moss islands, fern commas, the punctuation you've learned to read. Behind you, the ruin refuses a curtain call. It's just a wall. That is either mercy or showmanship. You are not obliged to decide. There's a last debate that walks beside you as you leave. When the wind said almost words, was it doing you a favor or asking one? The forest excels at offers disguised as weather. Maybe tonight's answer is in the way the cat doesn't look back, in how your breath uses the ruin's 3 notes without borrowing their fear. You carry that like a low, good hum, as the trees thin by degrees, and a new strangeness installs itself at the edge of hearing, canvas snickering in a breeze, the faint jingle of a zipper pull, laughter that sounds like relief, a camp someone's, somewhere ought to be just ahead. The stories say sometimes camps vanish, leaving their ring in the grass like a tidy bruise. You already know not to count tents before the stakes go in. The air lifts, and the forest, delighted with its own transitions, shows you the next scene. You hear it before you see it. Canvas whispering, the zipper's soft jingle, the particular rustle of a sleeping bag being coaxed into a better mood. Relief loosens your shoulders 1 notch, because nothing says, we're still in the human world, like the sound of someone cursing quietly at a stubborn tent pole. The cat lifts its head, triangulates with ears, and takes a right turn off the main track, like it's been RSVP'd. The tree line opens into a clearing scuffed with recent use grass pressed into ovals, footprints layered into a soft herringbone, a ring of stones where heat has licked them clean. A mug sits on a flat rock, steam ghosting from it. A lantern glows, set low. 2 tents angle toward each other in the polite geometry of strangers who decided to be neighbors. You catch a quick silhouette moving inside. 1, the bend of a shoulder, the slant of a hat brim, then a voice, got it, followed by the happy zip of victory. This is the common Hoia Baciu story told with the shrug of campers who have developed an appreciation for refunds. Sometimes whole camps vanish. One moment there's a tidy domestic scene tents, gear, a pair of chairs with sensible cup holders, and the next, bare earth. Not packed up, not looted. Erased. The coffee goes with it. The burn ring cools but persists. Photos taken seconds apart show a before and an after that makes shopkeepers rub their temples. The campers, when found later on a trail or in town, swear they left early because of weather. Clear sky above says otherwise. You raise a hand. Hey there, you call in that friendly, quiet way that assumes no one out here wants to be startled. The lantern blinks once power-saving glitch, you decide, and steadies. Footfalls scuff inside a tent. A shape shadows the nylon. The cat, ever the union rep for Observers Local 31, sits exactly where it can see everything and be blamed for nothing. Joke number 1. You tell the cat to draft our campsite etiquette memo friendly wave. Stay outside the guidelines. No judging someone's mug. Joke number 2. You tell the forest you'll give it 5 stars for adding human ambiance, provided no one tries to sell you an MLM for catalytic stoves. Joke number 3. You inform your tired legs that if a chair materializes, you will, in fact, betray every mystery you've ever loved and sit. You take 2 steps closer, and the lantern does that blink again, off on, a heartbeat out of sequence with your own. The steam from the mug thins, then stops, though the cup remains too warm to be without company. Inside the nearest tent, the silhouette bends and straightens, then without intermediate motion, stands on the other side of the fly. As if the zipper were a special effect, the forest decided to skip. You blink, and the person is gone. You look for the obvious trail out the far side, a dark jacket blending into trunks, and find only the even green of understory. The lesser-known variant has a different rhythm. The camp doesn't disappear all at once. It edits. A chair goes. Then the second. Then the lantern, leaving the glow behind for a breath like a sunburn afterimage. The mugs turn into empty space. The tents flatten imperceptibly, as if air were leaving their thoughts. And when you look again, the pegs are holes. People who have watched this swear the order changes every time, as if the forest is practicing, refining a trick, or deciding which piece of camping counts as being here. Then there's the obscure theory, traded in late-night gear repair circles. The forest saves states. Like a word processor auto-backing up a scene, Hoia Baciu keeps a copy of certain arrangements that please it: lantern, mug, stove at 45 degrees, tent doors mirrored like shy mouths. When wind, time, or chance jostles the scene too far from that saved version, the forest reverts. If you're looking at it when the revert happens, you get the magic. Clap, clap arrangement, then blank. It would be funny if it didn't make your skin agree with electricity. You step to the ring of stones. They're warm, yes, but less than they should be for a fire that looks recently coaxed. Ash in the center holds your boot print, a soft crescent where a curious toe tested depth, and when you lift your foot, the crescent feels like memory. The cat sniffs the mug, then gives it the universal feline verdict. Exists, not food. Some insist the vanishing camp is a straight human thing, pranks run by the living, with excellent timing and hidden paths. We packed while you blinked, the explanation goes, and we enjoyed your face. Others insist it's a time seam, identical to the shimmers you walked under earlier. 2 slices of the same clearing sliding across each other, like cards being squared. Glance up at the interleave, and you see both decks for a blink. Glance back, and you get whichever top card the forest wants to play. The unresolved debate gets spicier when people compare photos. Someone always has a frame with a lantern present but no light, or light with no lantern, or a chair casting a shadow that belongs to a different chair. You test the scene the way you've learned to, gently. Anyone around? You ask, voice tuned to bedtime again. The lantern quivers. The zipper on the nearest tent lifts a centimeter and sighs down on its own. The mug's thin heat moves through the porcelain and into your fingers in a way that is too intimate for crockery. You set it back where you found it, aligning the handle with the flat stone's edge, because you've learned that neatness earns favor here. Remember the disappearing path? The pine cone you pocketed? The ring you left? You glance at the ground around the fire ring and see a small circle traced in the dust. No pine cone, just a clean coin of earth the size of your palm. In the center, 3 tiny ash dots arranged like the notes you hummed for the Laughing Hollow. Down a step, up 2, home. You don't overthink it. You do hum, soft as breath. The lantern steadies. The zipper rests. For one breath, you feel like you've replied correctly to a question you weren't sure was yours to answer. The cat stands and pads to the far tent. It puts a paw delicately on the guy line and lets it bounce. The whole geometry wavers and holds. Then, it doesn't. The tent folds, not down, but in, like a paper trick performed by an impatient magician. Ridge to ground, sides through themselves, canvas to crease to nothing. The air where it stood shivers. Grass knits across the footprint. A chair becomes not chair. The lantern's glow lingers without a source, then contracts into a coin of light and is simply gone. You're left with a ring of stones cooling into honesty and the single polite mug, which fades last, gathering itself out of the world as if excusing its exit. Thank you for the tea. We had a lovely time. Joke number 4 tries for the door and you hold it, rules being rules, and settle for a smile that tilts toward awe. You say, "Well done," to the clearing. It's ridiculous. It's right. The forest likes being complimented on its set design. An unresolved mystery trails you as you step back under the edge trees. Where do the people go when the camp goes? The pragmatics say, the road, with the tone of a parent closing a storybook. The romantics say, a few minutes to the left of you, which is useless and perfect. A third faction, caretakers and search and rescue, practical folk say, most of the time, there were never people at all, only the residue of them. The forest keeps impressions the way bad pillows keep elbows, sharp for a while, then soft, then gone. Your mug hand feels briefly warmer in agreement. On the far side of the clearing, you find a scrap of tent tape half tucked under a tuft of grass. You leave it. Souvenirs don't travel well out of strange places. Beside it, a footprint that matches none of yours heads toward the trees and stops at nothing. Toe poised like a dancer who changed her mind. You follow the angle with your eyes and find a twin tree arch you would have sworn wasn't there a minute ago. 2 trunks leaning into a rough door, the space beneath them cooler by half a season. The Watcher's Hill would approve of the vantage. The orbs would navigate it like beads on a wire. The screaming wind could thread vowels through its join. You check the sky. It pretends innocence with admirable craft. The cat goes first, tail lifting into a question mark that already knows its answer. You look back once at the clean grass where a camp once was, and see only for a blink the ghost of your own chair there, empty, waiting. You do not sit. You bow, ridiculous and correct, to a host who enjoys an audience and dislikes goodbyes. Then you duck under the twin trees. The air on the other side smells like wet bark and promises. Somewhere ahead, water holds very still, and when you kneel to look into it, you will not see this forest. Not exactly. Your boots are ready. Your breath is steady. The hill under all this green turns a page with the softest sound. Past the vanished camp and the twin tree arch, the forest tightens again into tidy aisles, the trunks set like careful columns in a hall that prefers dim chandeliers to sunlight. The path is soft enough to muffle your steps, and the smell leans earthy wet bark and that faint iron of leaf veins. You slow without deciding to. Something about this stretch teaches the body to whisper. The first glow arrives as a pause in the dark. 2 small coins of pale fire hanging at your height across the path. Perfectly spaced, perfectly still. Not the warm drift of the orb you trailed earlier. Not fireflies jittering in their little Morse code. These hover like patient punctuation. Lanterns without hands to carry them. In the local, most circulated telling, this is the place of the lantern eyes. Hikers round a bend and find pairs of lights hovering at human height among the trees, sometimes 1 pair, sometimes 3, sometimes a repeat of the same 4 points stepping from trunk to trunk as if a single presence were checking angles. The lights don't sway like hung lamps. They don't bob like someone's headlamp. They observe. If you advance, they ease back. If you wait, they hold their ground with unnerving courtesy. Sometimes, they wink away one at a time, as if eyelids learned a rhythm. You lift your beam only enough to sketch the trunks. You've learned how easily full light offends. The coins remain. The cat sits, tail folded around its paws, gaze fixed on the same 2 points. A breath of wind would put a tremble in them. There is no wind. They burn like patient thoughts. Joke number 1. You murmur to the air that you appreciate the ambiance, but the concierge forgot the welcome mint. Joke number 2. You tell the cat that if these are porch lights, you're declining to knock. Joke number 3. You inform your flashlight it is forbidden to try to make friends right now. Onboarding will happen during daylight hours. A practical aside whispers in on boots and field guides. Skeptics love this stretch because they can list animals whose eyes throw back light: fox, dog, deer. Owls perched at the right angle line up at human height, and a tawny stare will pin you to the bark if you haven't earned one before. Angle your beam just so, and every glossy surface in the understory wet knot, beetle carapace, the polished face of a fungus returns a twin with your fear pasted between. In this telling, you're not watched by a person, you've been captured by optics. You angle your light low, skim the ground between those two coins. No body, no gleam of fur, no branch shadow to account for spacing. You raise the beam one slow breath. The coins don't flare or shrink. They simply remain, delicate as the suggestion of eyes in fog. Then, as if taking turns, the right pupil slides behind a trunk and peeks out again from 3 inches farther along. The left stays where it was, patient, independent. The lesser-known variant complicates things by claiming there are 2 kinds of lantern eyes. One kind reflects catch them wrong, and you'll see your own beam reversed in miniature. Move, and they move because physics says so. The other kind emits, casting a faint wash on bark and moss that persists for a blink after they're gone. Hikers who've met the second kind swear their pupils stayed needled for minutes after, as if the light tucked itself under their eyelids. People keep those details until late in the story because they sound like boasting or bad memory. They're neither. They're just unnerving. A slender sound creeps in from your right, a tiny scrape, like a nail-testing bark. The cat's ears pivot. A second pair of coins slides into view midway up a tree you were sure was empty. These sit closer together, lower to hand's breadth, their color a tone cooler. The first pair remains ahead, the second to the side, and for a heartbeat you entertain the kindly possibility that you've been greeted by a family out for a constitutional. You decide not to wave. There's an obscure interpretation that doesn't bother to argue biology at all. It calls the lights, sentries, manifestations of something scattered through the forest that occasionally decides to cohere where your attention is most polite. The pairs aren't eyes so much as nodes, the way 2 fireflies can make a line when you draw it between them in your mind. In that telling, the heights are a courtesy to you, set where you'll understand the posture of watching. If you were fox small, they would stoop. If you were stag tall, they would step to meet you. It's a grand theory. It would be obnoxious if it weren't so well behaved tonight. You take one small step, the kind you'd use to approach a wary animal. The forward pair slides back exactly 1 small step's worth. The side pair stays, a steady flank. You stop. Everything stops. Even the little leaf that was busy sawing the air with its own private drama chooses stillness. You listen for breath that isn't yours. The forest provides only the faint push-pull of distant air, rehearsing vowels for another ruin. Remember the orb's soft pulse? The coins borrow its rhythm for 2 beats brighten, soften, brighten. Then, the right-hand forward light drops out and reappears at precisely knee height, as if someone crouched to see you better. No branch blocks the gap. No rustle accompanies the change. Just a new position, polite and impossible. A debate that refuses to die sways between 2 camps in cafes around Cluj. One camp insists the lantern eyes are inevitably animal, sometimes 2 animals aligning into an eerie portrait, sometimes 1 owl and your own reflection flirting in the leaves. The other insists the pairs often set themselves, where no living body could tuck mid-air gulfs, with no limb to perch on, inches from trunk without the courtesy of a twig. Both camps tell excellent stories, both carry careful photos. Both leave room in their voices for the possibility that, sure, sometimes you meet physics, sometimes you meet the bit of the forest that has practiced being polite so long, it's learned how to hold a gaze. You try an experiment you found the woods often reward. Courtesy in, courtesy out. Quietly, you say, "We see you." Not a demand, not even quite a statement. The coins dim 1 degree, together, and hold. You take that for agreement, or tolerance. Either builds a bridge. The side pair flicks once blink, true as any eyelids, and slips higher, settling where a narrow shelf of bark could, in a world ruled by saner branches, hold a very small owl. You choose to believe the world has made space for that sanity tonight. The forward pair drift apart a little farther, the spacing gone slightly wider than a human face. If eyes can shrug, they do. Message received. not a person, something else. Trying on the costume of person for your benefit. Joke number 1 got its laugh. You owe 2 more. You tell the trees you're terrible at staring contests and will forfeit with grace. You add that your last pair of night vision goggles was a disaster in both fashion and function. These do a better job and carry less paperwork. The cat takes your sudden bravery as a cue to stand, stretch a luxurious stretch that puts your own vertebrae to shame, and trot between the 2 forward lights as if walking through a doorway. The lamps do not touch fur. They widen a fraction to let whiskers pass. If you were the sort to believe in allowances, you would call that one. The unresolved mystery that pads after you when the coins finally ease back into the dark is this. Why do they come in pairs at all? If trick, why not singles? If animals, why so quiet, so coordinated, so patient with your clumsy human beam? If sentries, why such kindness at the border of their watch? A romantic in boots might say, the forest is teaching you the shape of attention. 2 points held steady, a space between you, listen across. You don't have to choose. You carry the bright question forward and let it light your steps. The path loosens its grip on your ankles, and the trees arrange themselves into a narrow alley where sound travels clean and straight. A scrap of paper flutters where bark should be smooth, a pale rectangle pinned by a sliver of wood at chest height, edges too crisp for weather. It does not belong, which is why it probably does perfectly. You glance back once. A single coin of light remains for a heartbeat in the place where the forward pair stood, a soft period at the end of a patient sentence. It winks away without drama. Ahead, the paper waits, and your name, if the forest has decided to borrow it, waits with it. You're a step from the pale rectangle, pinned to the bark, when the air does that thing it does right, before weather tightens, sweetens, pulls its shoulders up around its ears. The canopy above remains a puzzle of green and gaps, no clouds doing their theater. Still, you feel a cool prickle lace your scalp, a hush pass over the understory like a hand smoothing sheets. The cat looks up, blinks once, and scoots 2 paces to the side, as if it's practiced dodging something that hasn't arrived yet. It arrives. Not drizzle this time, not the shy, personal mist that followed you back in Section 9. This is a clean, vertical curtain, a sudden rain that draws a narrow rectangle in the air, as if the forest taped off a stage and ordered weather accordingly. You're standing in the middle of it. 2 feet to your left, dust lifts dry from your boot. 2 feet to your right, pine needles sit crisp and obedient. Inside your little rain cell, droplets tick the leaves, stipple your sleeves, bead on the paper you have not yet read. In the common Hoia Baciu telling, this is the sudden rain proper. You can step in and out of it like a shower stall at the edge of a campground. No thunder, no wind, no warning. Just a sheet that begins and ends on lines you could draw with a ruler. Hikers describe a smell that doesn't belong to water, metal tart, like a coin on the tongue, the same storm without clouds perfume you met in the bending sky stretch. Stay long enough, and the cell will sometimes walk with you, keeping pace like a polite umbrella that forgot width. You test the border with a hand. Your wrist is dry, the heel of your palm is wet. 1 more inch and your knuckles sparkle with drops that evaporate faster than they have any right to. You use your body as a hinge. Lean in, lean out. The line holds. The cat watches with the tolerant expression of a docent whose daily tour includes new guests discovering doors. The lesser-known variant complicates the geometry. It says the rain picks you, not space. 2 people can stand shoulder to shoulder, and only one will be baptized. Switch sides, and the rain will obediently recenter on the chosen head. Walk backward, and it follows. Step behind a trunk, and it threads needles to stay with you. In that telling, it's less a shower and more a scan. Folks who've carried that scan a while swear it leaves a faint pattern on their sleeves when the sun finds them later, rings and arcs like watermarks that echo the growth lines in the trees. Then there's the obscure theory, the one that invites science to the campfire and lets folklore sit with its feet up. According to the earnest voice in that corner, you're inside a pocket of supersaturated air, focused by odd thermals. Warm vapor rising from transpiring leaves, cool downdrafts sliding off the shaded trunks, all of it shaped by the crooked canopy into a column where tiny ions help droplets coalesce. Add micro-eddies that keep the drops recycling in place, and you get a tidy, self-sustaining shower. The metallic tang, corona discharge from leaf edges under the right charge, imbalance ozone brewed in small batches. You don't have to pick a side to appreciate the elegance of the idea. You only have to admit that whatever's wetting your eyebrows seems very pleased with its choreography. Joke number 1. You tell the forest you're honored. It sprung for bespoke weather, but you didn't bring formal wear. Joke number 2. You inform the cat that you are, for tonight, rain compatible, which earns you the kind of feline blink that translates to, I already knew that. Joke number 3. You stage whisper to the paper on the trunk that this is a terrible time to be reading outdoors, but you admire its commitment to ambiance. You shade the page with your hand on reflex. The droplets strike your skin and vanish, as if the forest were writing in invisible ink and you're the blotter. The paper darkens, then lightens too quickly to be truly wet. The drawing, if it is a drawing, isn't ruined. Good. That belongs to another section. The story has been keeping its schedule, more or less, and you've learned to respect its calendar. A detail hikers don't always share on first telling. The sound of this rain is wrong, not broken, just local. The drops hit leaves and ground with a domestic patter, but the surrounding forest doesn't carry the rhythm outward. No answer from the canopy, no enlarged hush, no distant applause that rain usually teaches trees to give. Your ears recognize the illusion, the way a fountain indoors can feel like a private weather, but they still reach for the expected choruses and come back with only you. Remember the earlier drizzle patch that moved when you did? This cell is more confident. It prefers squares to circles, corners to curves. When you step forward, it lag follows by half a heartbeat, then re-squares around you with the precision of a careful packer tucking tissue around a fragile thing. When you stop, it shaves itself tighter for one breath, as if evaluating, then loosens its margins again. The border clips the cat's back paw. It withdraws with a tiny shake like a professional who doesn't file formal complaints for inconveniences under 30 seconds. There's a local superstition, carried mostly by grandfathers, who fix fences and remember which seasons their knees hurt, that if the sudden rain anoints you twice in one walk, the forest means to deliver you to a door. Not punishment, not prize, simply a threshold. Folks tally their showers with a gruff pride that sounds exactly like fishermen and exactly like astronauts. You mentally tally. Once in Section 9, now twice. A door would be very on-brand. An unresolved mystery puddles at your boots. The ground inside the cell wets in a pattern that doesn't match the drop. You expect stipple. You get thin, braided lines, as if the water is mapping routes just beneath the litter before choosing where to show. Photographs taken from above, drones on bold nights, have captured square rain cells whose wet floor is cross-hatched like a fingerprint. Skeptics call it surface tension and micro-rills. Others call it handwriting. You hold still long enough to let the novelty pass and curiosity do its slower, better work. You listen to the rain's timbre. It starts to talk in consistency instead of surprise. You could stand here and let it write your outline for the trees. Instead, you take a small step sideways, out. The border trims your shoulder, then clears. Silence returns, not with a flourish, but like a lid settling back on a pot, gentle, sealing. The cat trots into your vacated square, stops, and nothing. Dry. It steps out. The rain winks back on where you stand now. All right, you say, smiling at the cell's unhelpful honesty. Message received. You try an old backcountry trick and extend a finger beyond the border. Collect 3 drops, then flick them to the dry needles just outside. They strike and don't sink. They pebble, hold, and then vanish as if drunk by dust, leaving no dark mark at all. Inside the square, your sleeve prints a perfect trio of damp coins before forgetting them. The physics here keeps 1 foot in story and 1 in lab. A quieter variant shared by those who prefer tenderness to taxonomy says the rain is how the forest says you're welcome to stay a little longer. Not because it wants you drenched, but because water is the oldest ceremony everyone understands. Baptism without doctrine. Rinse your nerves, reset your breath. Go on, you find you don't mind being read that way. Because you have learned to be courteous in odd places, you bow your head just once, just enough to count as thanks and step out of the square. The rain stops with almost comic obedience, like a stagehand killing a cue. The paper on the tree waits, its edges unwarped, its pin braced in fresh bark. You leave it alone, not because you don't want it, but because the forest just hinted at a door, and you'd like to arrive on time. As if concurring, the air ahead cools by a polite degree, and you feel, before you see, 2 trunks curving toward one another. Not the casual arches you've ducked under before. This is deliberate architecture twin trees that have grown into a shared lintel, their crowns braided, their interior shadow a darker, steadier thing than ordinary shade. The stories call this the twin tree doorway, and your tally says you've earned it fair. Joke number 2 is still owed, but you pocket it for the porch. Joke number 3, you cash here. You tell the rain cell, now behind you, that you'll leave a nice review. Fast service, custom sizing, confusing aftertaste. The forest permits the smile and makes no move to edit it. One last detail, because Hoia Baciu loves them. As you turn toward the doorway, a single drop lands on the back of your neck, a full 10 seconds after the rain ended. It is colder than the others and unmistakably there. It slides under your collar like a signature. You do not shiver. You let the name sit. The cat has already gone ahead, tail high, vanishing through the braided lintel like a line of neat script crossing a T. The path beyond isn't brighter, exactly, but it is clearer in that peculiar way that says someone meant this to be walked. You follow, leaving the square behind to dry without evidence, and step into the cool that doors are made of. The doorway isn't just two trunks leaning like neighbors gossiping over a fence. It's intentional in a way. Trees aren't supposed to be bodies bowed toward each other. Crowns braided so neatly you could believe someone climbed up there with a comb. The shade beneath it is a different temperature than the shade around it. Cooler, steadier, as if the forest decided shadow could be a room and then built one. You stop a pace short. The cat sits at the threshold with the air of a concierge who has already checked you in. Somewhere behind, the square rain finishes evaporating from your sleeves. A single late drop forgets itself and falls, cold on the back of your neck. A tiny punctuation you take as, yes, this is the place. In the common telling, this is a gate of Puerta, a natural arch people swear wasn't there on the way in. Locals say twin trees grow like this when something wants a door more than it wants two trunks. Step through, and you'll find the path cleaner for a while, your breath easier, as if the forest has taken responsibility for your route. Some hikers report a formal sensation at the lintel, a faint pressure on the crown of the head, a cool stripe along the spine, the smallest tug between the shoulder blades, remember that push from earlier? Turning polite. Others bow without being told why, and the trees seem to lean a fraction lower, which is either theater or blessing. A lesser-known variant makes the gate older and stranger. It says arch-twins are the work of the Aili, the wild maidens, who dance people out of their sense on summer nights. In that version, the doorway is the place they pass when they're done with the clearing. If you're under it as they go, you'll come away with gifts you didn't ask for. 2 songs you can't stop humming and a habit of turning your head when no one calls your name. The remedy is simple and hard. Walk backward through the arch, eyes softened, and hum a third note that doesn't belong to either of the first 2. You smile at that down a step, up 2, home, and wonder who wrote that footnote on the same paper as your evening. Then there's the obscure theory, the kind that wears a field notebook and a grin. It says twin door growth isn't magic at all, but choreography. 2 saplings the same age, tilted by wind from one winter, seeking light through each other's gap. Guided by the underground advice of their shared mycorrhizal network, the wood wide web telling both trunks, closer will work better. We'll share sugars later. Years pass. Cambium thickens where stress demands. Fibers learn a curve. The crowns meet like hands. Add the hills' rumors of magnetic oddities and microclimates, and you get a grove predisposed to arches. Doors, in this telling, are trees remembering a conversation with wind. Joke number 1. You tell the doorway you didn't bring a gift for the housewarming, unless it's the pine cone in your pocket, and that feels like regifting. Joke number 2. You ask the cat if there's a dress code. If so, your jacket would like to be considered mysteriously damp chic. Joke number 3. You tap the braided crown with your eyes and say, love the updo, because flattery costs nothing and sometimes opens very old locks. The unresolved debate among people who've walked this path is whether you should ask permission. One camp speaks aloud, may I? And swears the air answers with a cool yes that feels like a ribbon settling around the shoulders. The other camp takes a softer route. Lay fingers to bark, stand a breath, listen with skin. If the bark warms, proceed. If it cools, wait. A third, quieter camp says do neither. Simply turn your palms outward at your sides so you arrive without holding anything. You split the difference, palms out, breath slow, shoulders lowered. The push at your back that guided you here returns for a single, generous nudge, and then stands down. Under the lintel, the air thickens like a held cord. Sound trims to essentials, the soft word your jacket makes against itself, the tiny click of a beetle rearranging its plans, the distant satisfied peck of the punctual woodpecker. Light goes a half-step bluer. Your watch hesitates, the second hand fails to decide if it prefers this side or that, then remembers its duty. You feel taller by a polite inch, which is either posture or permission. You pause in the exact center and let the arch read you. You've learned this pace, not submission, not challenge, collaboration. A faint tingle crosses your scalp, the exact cousin of standing below the bending sky back in Section 3. The crown of the twins carries small burrs, tiny nodules of mixed bark that look enough like stitches to make a metaphor blush. A breath of air moves through only here, as if the doorway owns a private breeze. Some hikers promise the door edits you gently. It tidies your pockets. People report finding what they didn't know. They kept train stubs from cities they've never visited. Coins none of their banks would weigh, leaves folded into paper cranes. Others exit with less notes they jotted are gone. A fear they carried has slipped its leash, or a stubborn headache refiled itself in a cabinet across the room. Skeptics call it attention and adrenaline. Attention does make hands misplace and headaches forget. Still, the stories keep their edges. You step out the far side and the path obliges, lining itself like sensible handwriting. Ferns in commas, stones in softened periods, light in parentheses that open and close above you without argument. Behind, the doorway holds its shape. Ahead, the ground breathes easier, and so do you. The cat glances back only once, the feline version of a staff member checking the head count. Remember the lantern eyes? 2 pale coins hover for 1 heartbeat off to your right, then wink out as if whoever kept watch has signed the handoff and gone home. Remember the screaming wind? A low vowel tries the edges of the arch and decides against singing. Remember the laughter's 3 notes? A thrush flutes something perilously similar and pretends it's always done so. A small, practical thing, you try the courtesy bow in reverse, a half nod to the space you're leaving. The arch answers with a soft pat on your shoulder, the same pressure that urged you here, only now it feels like the last tap a friend gives a doorframe as they exit a kitchen they know by heart. You didn't cry, you tell your future self that. Your future self will believe you because this is a bedtime story, and we are all very reasonable about doors that behave. There's a morse of footprints in the duff just beyond the gate. 1 set larger, 1 set child small. They enter the doorway together, but only the larger set prints out the far side. The smaller end as neatly as a sentence. You let your eyes rest there and do not draw lines your heart doesn't need. We save that page for another section. The forest keeps a strict syllabus. You check your phone without hope and find it has learned manners again. Battery sulking, yes, but no longer free falling. The last photo you took tries to rotate itself to match the new horizon and fails twice before deciding to live with a slight tilt. You leave it. Tilt feels honest. Another debate that never quite finds a chair. Where do these twin doorways go when you're not looking? Some swear they move shift 50 yards to catch moonlight, or stand up entirely and walk like tall deer before setting their lintel back down. Others say they are fixed as bedrock. Only your path wanders until it meets them. There are maps with little circles and dates. There are maps with nothing but the words sometimes. Both are right enough for folklore, accurate at the scale that matters. The walking human, the thinking tree. You take 20 unremarkable steps and find them remarkable. The trail no longer edits itself under your feet. Your boots keep their version of straight. You can hear water now, not rushing, but holding still in a way that makes sound anyway, the way mirrors hum without noise. The air ahead cools by the small amount that means reflection exists nearby. The cat knows this part. It picks up the slightest speed and glances left, where the understory thins and the ground dips toward a basin that is not river and not puddle. Before you leave the sightline of the arch, you turn and lift 2 fingers in the hello. You offer doorways and shadows and polite phenomena. The twin crowns lean a hair, or the breeze makes a case. Or you are exactly the kind of sentimental traveler who sees thanks where physics lives. Pick any, all are kind. The path descends. The light flattens into the calm, a still surface asks of the sky. Ahead, A pool waits that will show you a forest not quite your own if you're careless or careful, depending on your appetite for accurate answers. Your pine cone sits patient in your pocket. Your 3 notes rest under your breath. Your name, if the trees borrowed it, will be on a page you haven't touched yet. The doorway closes like a book that knows you'll open it again, and the mirror opens like a question someone has practiced asking for a very long time. The path settles into a hush that feels curated ferns spaced like careful commas, stones polite underfoot, the light behaving itself for once. Water is near. You can hear its quiet confidence somewhere to your left. The cat pads ahead, tail at half-mast, and you start to angle toward that still sound when something pale interrupts the bark at shoulder height. Paper. A neat rectangle pinned to a beach with a sliver of wood, edges too crisp for a forest that eats edges for breakfast. You've seen its cousin before back in the rain cell. You deferred it then because the weather was auditioning. Tonight, the sky behaves. The page waits with the patience of a child who knows the answer and is determined to let you get there yourself. You stop, palms open at your sides, because that's how you've learned to approach gifts out here. The cat hops onto a root that bulges like a sleeping shoulder and sits as if this were a desk and roll call has begun. In the common Hoia Baciu telling, people find drawings in these woods pinned like this, or tucked into a crevice, or caught under a fallen twig just enough to stay put. They're almost always childlike. Houses, trees, people with sticks for limbs, and circles for hands. The odd part isn't the art, it's the condition. The pages look new, colors are bright, edges are dry even after rain. A few show details that don't match any nearby path. A fence where there isn't one, a tall shadow with too many elbows, a little girl's ribbon colored carefully red. Ask around in Cluj and you'll meet someone whose aunt swears she saw her own garden on a page 15 kilometers from home. You lean closer. The drawing on this sheet is done in waxy crayon that glints a little, where pressure changed the paper's skin. At the bottom, a bright green slope with dark vertical lines, trees. In that sincere way, kids announce trees. Above them, a bluish oval with short lines drawn around it like a sun that wishes it were a pond. On the slope are 3 stick figures holding hands. 2 have circles for heads and lines for mouths. The one in the middle is blank where features should be. A red streak at its crown could be a ribbon, or the crayon lost patience and found a stripe. The lesser-known variant of this story sharpens the unease. In those versions, the drawings update. Hikers pass the same trunk twice in a night, and the page is changed. A new figure added, the red streak now on the left. The pond oval a bit larger with wavier lines. No hands in the first pass, linked hands in the second. People ask who's pinning them and when, and the obvious answer's the living. With nimble feet and a sense of drama, don't quite take when you're deep enough in, and the branches are the only hands you've met. And then there's the obscure theory, saved for tables with good tea and patience. It suggests that paper cellulose spun thin belongs to trees the way hair belongs to heads, and that the forest sometimes reclaims its own, not to devour, but to annotate. The mycelial networks, the xylem's stopped clock, the chemistry that hums in leftover fiber, somehow it lets the woods write on pages that used to be part of them. You get drawings not because a child left them, but because the forest remembers the shapes that live in children's hands, and copies them with sap and pressure, and a kind of patience no printer can buy. You don't have to believe that to enjoy how it feels landing in your chest. Joke number 1. You tell the beach you admire its mixed media period, and you'd like to subscribe to its newsletter. Joke number 2. You warn the cat that if the forest asks for royalty payments, you're paying in pine cones. Joke number 3. You apologize in advance to crayon manufacturers because you're about to accuse them of collaborating with trees. You look for a signature. There isn't one. There is a tiny triangle in the bottom corner, shaded carefully. A tent? A warning? A shape the hand enjoyed drawing? You've seen a triangle and a set of stones earlier. Tonight loves repetition. The cat leans in and sniffs the page. Its whiskers don't flinch at chemical stink. If this is fresh wax, it's the cleanest wax that ever lived. An unresolved mystery, elbows for chair space. Right then, whose face is the blank? Some say it's the girl with the red ribbon, the forest's favorite returnee sketched by her own hand before she learned to tell eyes from whispers. Others say the empty head is for whoever is currently looking. Stand in front of the page and the blank belongs to you. Step away and it belongs to whoever comes next. A third, pricklier camp says the blank isn't a face at all, it's a hole. The drawing leaves a space for something to arrive, as if the forest expects an addition and is tidying the border in advance. You angle your light low to keep glare off the wax. The stick figure on the left has 3 lines radiating from its head like little crown rays. Adult. The one on the right has shorter legs and a dot on the chest that could be a button or a stain someone took the trouble to sanctify. The blank-faced middle figure's arms are longer than they should be, lines going past where the hands of the others meet. The 3 are linked, but the middle spans the gap with extra reach. Kind, if you want it to be. Greedy, if you're collecting shadows tonight. There's a practical rebuttal for all of this, of course. People make treasure hunts. People love leaving stories under glass you didn't ask for. A guide might plant these as a way to goose the night. A skeptic might do it to win a bet. Your own better angels remind you that folklore often has a human hand at the beginning. The trouble is timing. You've been listening all night in that careful way that hears both wind and handwriting. No feet, no laughter's fistful of giggles trying to be a person. Just you, the cat, and a page that seems to have waited until the path smoothed to step out. Some hikers, especially those who've walked here with kids, say the drawings change when small hands touch them. A child will point and say, "That's me," and the blank will fill a little, as if the seeing and the being seen are mirrors that prefer to be used together. Adults try it and get nothing. The page stays polite and inscrutable. You raise your hand and stop before your shadow crosses the paper, because you've also learned boundaries. The cat taps the pin once with a paw, and the page doesn't tremble. It's more fixed than it looks. Remember your 3-note hum from the laughter hollow? Down a step, up 2, home. You let it slip out softly, not as a test, just as a way of greeting that has served you well. The wax glints in the red streak, then in the pond, then rests. If that's response, it's softer than wind on moss. A quiet, odd interpretation, a cousin you've heard only once, says the pages aren't made for you at all. They're maps for whatever else walks here. The stick figures mark where people are. The pond shows when the mirror is open, more on that in a minute. The ribbon marks a route. In that telling, the blank face is a wild card. The forest's way of letting the other walkers decide who joins the trio tonight. It's a story that could bruise if you held it wrong. You tuck it back gently, it can ride without a seatbelt. You finally do the simple thing and lift the edge of the page to check the bark beneath. Dry. No imprint of wax. The pin is a sliver of the same tree, shaved thin. It slides out with the clean complaint of something that fits. On the back of the sheet, there's a second drawing in fainter lines. The same trio, but the middle figure has a circle for a face this time. And inside the circle, a single dot, placed where a left eye would be, off-center and charmingly stubborn. You look up at the forest without meaning to, the way you look at a camera when a friend says, "Smile." You set the page back exactly as it was. Your fingers arrange the pin with a care that would impress a librarian. A gentle breeze, if its breeze, passes over your knuckles and leaves them cooler by a fraction. The cat flicks its tail once, which in this religion means approved. Well-known variant, obscure theory, unresolved mystery, your pockets are full. The path to your left deepens into that slow sound you've been hearing for a while. Not a stream, not a fall, but a held breath of water. The drawing's bluish oval with its short lines seems more map than art now. You follow because the forest has a tidy way of linking its chapters, and because you want to see what the oval looks like when the sky tries itself on in it. Joke number 2. You tell the page, softly, that if it's taking commissions, you have notes about your good side. Joke number 3. You tell the trees you're open to constructive criticism, but you prefer it not be in crayon. The forest allows both and edits neither. As you step off, a small thing happens that will read like nothing in daylight, and like everything at 2 a.m. The red crayon streak seems to gleam once more. No brighter than a pulse in the hand of someone trying not to squeeze too hard. Then, it settles into its color like a quiet promise. You carry the promise with your pine cone and your 3 notes, you and your black cat metronome, down a slope that relaxes into a basin of still water. Ahead, the surface waits, perfect as a lens, arrogant as a clock, the kind of calm that invites questions and answers with versions instead of facts. The mirror pond has its own rules and more opinions than the forums in town. You square your shoulders, soften your eyes, and let the forest turn the page. The trees step back as if someone called, "Room, please." and a basin reveals itself, rounded banks dressed in moss and low grass. A few polite stones making a necklace around the lip. The pond in the middle isn't large, but it has that old arrogance small mirrors learn. It reflects only what it wants. Wind has the good manners to leave it alone. Even the midges orbit at a respectful altitude. You come down the bank slow because speed feels like shouting in a library. The cat gets there first, of course, hopping onto a flat stone and folding into a loaf with the poise of a docent who knows this gallery's best angles. The water smells faintly mineral, faintly leaf, none of the rot you expect from stillness. You squat until your knees announce themselves and let your eyes soften. The trick with mirrors is to look at the middle and also not quite look at the middle. The pond rewards the effort by offering back the sky with 2 fewer clouds than you counted on the way in. In the common telling, this is the mirror pond, where reflections misbehave. People swear it shows a forest that isn't this one, trunk straighter or bent in wrong directions, a path where none exists behind you, a tree crowned with a tangle you'll only meet next year. Sometimes, the reflection carries a figure near the bank, someone standing right where you stand, except when you glance sideways, you're companionless. Photographs never catch the wrongness. They come out honest and boring. The strangeness belongs to eyes and the wet page they're reading. You try a simple test. You raise your right hand. In the water, a hand rises too, but its sleeve is a slightly different length, cuff looser. A thread you don't own dangling a small confession. You lower yours. The one below lingers a heartbeat, then agrees. Your throat does that small, dry click that means noticed. The lesser-known variant turns the pond into a door you can open without falling in. Folks tell it like a dare. If you hum a tune at the bank and the pond hums back, step closer and you'll see the other side. The forest's cousins snap into crisp focus. Paths where none are, sky with a seam, birds crossing in the wrong direction. Put a fingertip to the surface, and it will be warmed by someone else's skin from the far side. Leave it there too long and you'll take your hand away with a ring of cold that lasts through autumn. You've already got a tune, so you try your 3 notes down a step, up 2, home soft enough not to embarrass the trees. The surface tightens as if a breath were held beneath it. No echo comes, but a tiny ripple stitches the notes into a single seam and sends it toward the center. Taylor's work, obscure theory time, the kind that drags geology and optics to the campfire and buys them tea. The basin shape, they say nearly circular, shallow-sided, rimmed with pale stones, sets up a polarizing effect on sky glow. Add dissolved organics from leaf litter to darken the water to a precise green-brown, and you get a mirror bias toward edge light. Your brain, primed by the night and the stories, resolves those edges into the other forest. Branches it missed, trunks its rods prefer, a path your eyes complete. Toss in microcurrents that delay your reflection by a fraction of a second, yes. Fluid dynamics can be that cheeky, and your hand lags behind by exactly enough to teach your stomach a new trick. It's physics. The theory ends kindly, plus nerves. You put it in the possible drawer with a label that reads, Science with Bedtime Manners. Joke number 1. You tell the pond you respect a body of water that keeps secrets without blooming algae about it. Joke number 2. You ask the cat if it's planning to critique your form. Your reflection's cuff game is apparently stronger. Joke number 3. You warn the water that if it shows you a version of yourself with better posture, you're walking straight into it out of spite. The surface flatlines into perfection. You lean a little closer and notice the silvery coin of a fish near the bottom, suspended as if pinned. It doesn't flick a fin. The pond offers you your face with the sort of kindness mirrors sometimes manage after a long day. Then, without any fuss, a second face steps into the frame beside yours. It's not the cat. The cat refuses to be reflected in a way that lets it be captured. This visitor is a smooth oval with no features, hairline suggested but never inked, the exact height the blank-faced stick figure would be if crayons learned depth. It stands only in the water. There is no one beside you on the bank. You don't flinch because you've learned the rule here. Gentle humor before you let your heart quick step. You again, you say softly, not expecting an answer. The pond answers anyway, but, in image, your reflected shoulders drop a notch you haven't earned yet, and the blank face inclines the tiniest degree, as if that counts for hello. An unresolved mystery ripples across the conversations in Cluj cafes. Does the pond show you who walks with you here, or who might have walked with you somewhere else? Some swear it prints out the road not taken companion, the friend from a different year, the lover from a version of the city with kinder timing, the child who didn't come back with the two taller figures. Others swear it's only ever the forest itself, borrowing a shape you'll receive without alarm. The third camp, quietest, stubbornest, says it's always you, split by a second. You, with one more breath in your lungs. You, with one less reason to hurry. You test with the simplest courtesy. You lift two fingers in the hello you offer, doorways and shadows. In the water, the blank lifts the same two fingers. On the other hand, you almost laugh. That's cheating. Your reflection's mouth curves a half second before yours does. Cheating again. Remember the drizzle that anointed only you? The square rain that wrote a border around your outline? The pond has that same editorial hand. When you exhale, the surface doesn't cloud your mouth. It clouds the space where the blank-faced companion's mouth would be. A soft bloom that petals and fades. It is ridiculous to be comforted by fog where a mouth is not. You are comforted anyway. The cat stands, steps to the very edge, and extends one paw. Its pads hover a hair above the water, polite. A single ring spreads from the non-contact, as if the pond agreed there was enough paw for physics. The ring reaches the far side, kisses the bank, and returns. Not quite as neat, not quite as round. The blank face tilts toward it, then centers again. The fish finally moves a small turn, an acknowledgement, not hunger. There's a quieter variant told by people who keep bees or bread starters or other living things that cooperate on their own timetable. They say if you feed the pond something gentle crumbs of apple, a bit of honey with a fingertip, the reflection will trade. It shows not the other forest, not the blank, but a memory you've misplaced that would make this night easier to carry. Folks report seeing their grandmother's kitchen window at 4 p.m. In September, a dog's tail hitting a wall in a rhythm their calendars forgot. The exact cobalt of one hostile mug under one fluorescent tube on one sad morning. You happen to have nothing but a pine cone and 3 notes. The cone is not food. The notes are. You hum them again, and this time a tiny, impossible second voice harmonizes the middle interval. A half shadow of sound that could be wind and chooses to be kindness. You decide, because boundaries make doors, to keep your hands dry. You press your palm flat on your knee instead and count 10 slow breaths. The tunnel's tempo slowed further for water. On breath 6, a ripple crosses the blank's oval like a smile testing the idea of itself. On breath 8, your reflection finally catches up to your cuff. On breath 10, the pond stops pretending to be a flawless mirror and becomes water again, with skins and scents and the faint sway of a not-quite breeze, making the smallest promises. People argue about leaving offerings, coins, ribbons, pages in the mirror pond. Some say the water dislikes pocket trash and will take offense by showing you an answer you didn't ask for. Others say it's the only way to get the pond to keep a secret for you. Tonight, you keep your pockets as they are. You lay your gratitude on the surface, without disturbing it, and imagine it sinking by agreement rather than gravity. A last, prickly thought arrives and behaves itself. What if the pond doesn't reflect ahead or aside, but behind? Not your past, its own? What if Hoia Baciu lets you see the version of itself from a minute ago, a day ago, a year ago? Because it enjoys the way you compare and soften, the blank face would then be the forest's favorite placeholder, a way to set a figure in a poem before it decides which noun to use. You know better than to fall in love with an interpretation, but as you step back, the idea lines up with your bones with satisfying thrift. The cat leads you up the bank with a thump of tail that means next. Behind you, the pond keeps its secrets in an orderly pile. Ahead, the path darkens by a degree, and the air reaches your name from farther than a human throat should manage. Not loud, not cruel. Perfectly pitched. If Section 23 wants to show off, it's earned the right. You do not turn yet. That belongs to the next breath, the next step, the next lesson in saying yes or no to things that wear your syllables with such excellent diction. You pat your pocket where a pine cone rides against a page you didn't steal, hum once because you can, and walk toward the voice that knows you. The voice says your name again soft, as if spoken through cupped hands, each syllable folded so it doesn't echo. You know better than to answer out loud, but you still tilt your head, which is an answer of its own. The cat freezes mid-step, tail a perfect question mark. The path ahead narrows into a corridor of young birches, their white trunks luminous in the dimness, like they've been practicing moonlight all day. You enter, and the voice falls quiet, replaced by a kind of charged silence, the kind you hear in church when the hymn ends but nobody sits yet. The birches lean just enough to give you the sense of being guided, or maybe escorted. In the common telling, this is the Whispering Lane. People say voices here don't just call your name, they borrow other things you've heard. Your mother's laugh from when you were small, a coworker's sigh after the meeting that went too long, the first line of a song you never learned the end of. Sometimes, the lane will give you those sounds before you've lived them phrases that will only make sense months later. The bravest hikers keep walking until the lane runs out. The more cautious turn around the moment the voice sounds almost right. You take a few slow steps and, sure enough, the air shifts behind your ear. It's your own voice this time, asking, "Are you sure?" A strange question, gentle, not challenging. You don't answer. A breeze moves through the birch leaves, and the sound is the softest applause you've ever heard. The lesser-known variant says the lane is a testing ground. The forest uses it to measure how well you recognize what's yours and what isn't. It will call you in 100 disguises. If you follow the wrong one, you'll find yourself in the clearing that wasn't there before, a place with no path out, until you speak your own name exactly as you did the first time you ever said it. The trouble, of course, is remembering. You picture yourself as a toddler, mouth still learning shapes, and wonder what your name tasted like back then. An obscure theory, told mostly by linguists who camp here with too much recording equipment, claims the birches create a natural parabolic effect, bending sound until it loops. Your voice or a bird call might bounce and return to you with just enough distortion to seem like someone else. Add wind, humidity, and human imagination, and you get ghosts without needing ghosts at all. You file that under probably true, but not nearly as fun. Joke number 1. You tell the lane it's got a great impersonation act, but the casting director in your head is picky. Joke number 2. You inform the cat that if it hears itself meowing from the wrong direction, it should not investigate. Joke number 3. You mutter to the birches. If you're going to whisper secrets, at least make them flattering. A new voice slides in, female, low-pitched, with an accent you can't quite pin. "Hurry," it says, and the leaves on the right flicker like a curtain pulled back. The cat doesn't move. You don't either. That's the first rule you've learned here. Never move, because someone else said to. You wait. The air grows still again, the gap between trunks filling itself back in. The unresolved mystery people argue over is whether the voices here are pulling or pushing. Do they want you to follow? Or are they trying to slow you down, keep you from something farther ahead? Hikers swap stories like trading cards. One swears they avoided disaster because they listened to a whisper that told them to stop. Another says they lost 3 hours, chasing a voice that promised help, and found only an empty path. No pattern has ever been agreed upon. You keep walking, keeping your gaze forward but your ears open. The birches begin to change slightly wider spacing, more moss on the bases. The light ahead takes on a faint gold tone, as if the sun remembered this lane last. Behind you, the voices give one last try, a child saying, "Come see," with the kind of wonder that almost hurts to ignore. You pass through the final birch arch, and the sound falls away. It's like stepping from the surf onto dry sand. Your ears notice the absence before your mind does. The cat trots ahead a few steps and looks back, satisfied. The path opens into a slope, leading down towards something faintly glowing in the dusk. It is an electric light, too warm, too steady. The glow comes from a circle of stones, waist high, each one slick with moss, except where a pale yellow sheen seeps out like it's lit from the inside. You feel it before you reach it, that gentle thrum in your bones, that means important. The kind of place the forest might have been trying to get you to all along. Remember the doorway's nudge, the page's red streak, the pond's companion? It feels like all of them are somewhere ahead, waiting in the glow. The cat takes its place on the nearest stone, tail curling like a question mark drawn in ink. You stop just outside the circle, not sure yet whether you've been invited or challenged. The air inside the ring moves differently. Leaves drift down and land upright against the moss, as if the wind forgot how gravity works here. Your name is gone from the air now. Whatever's next won't call it, will wait for you to step in. The circle of stones seems older than the forest itself, though that's impossible unless it isn't. Each one leans inward just enough to suggest conversation. as though they've been debating for centuries and you've just walked in on a very long pause. The glow that seeps from their mossy skins doesn't flicker like firelight. It's steady, like the inside of a lantern, but without a visible source. You step closer, careful not to cross the line where the moss ends and the bare soil begins. The cat is already inside, perched on one of the lower stones with the self-appointment of a judge. Its eyes reflect the glow in a way that makes them look deeper, like something's watching from behind them. In the common telling, this is the speaking circle. No one agrees on what it says, only that it says something. People who stand inside claim to hear words in languages they don't understand, rhythms that sound like speech but dissolve into rustle when you focus too hard. Some say the stones trade stories between themselves, passing them round and round, until they find the right listener to send one home with. Others think they're not speaking to you but through you, using your body like an echo chamber for messages meant for someone else. You crouch to study one stone more closely. Its surface is etched with fine grooves, most hidden by moss, but a few clean enough to trace. They don't seem like writing, not in any alphabet you know. They're more like the pathways rainwater takes over years, carving memory into skin. When you touch one with a fingertip, the glow deepens a shade, warm enough that you pull your hand back instinctively. The cat blinks at you slowly, as if to say that's one way to ask permission. The lesser-known variant claims the circle records every voice that's passed through it. Not just words, but tone, breath, hesitation. If you step inside, it might play something back your own voice from a time you've forgotten, or one you haven't used yet. A man in Cluj swears the circle let him hear his late grandmother humming while she worked in the garden, even though she'd never set foot in the forest. He says it was so vivid he could smell the soap she used on her hands. Obscure theory lovers, especially the ones who like magnets and seismic charts, suggest the stones are rich in quartz or iron, acting as natural recorders of vibration. The glow, they argue, is just bioluminescent lichen thriving in the damp. Your ears, primed for story, translate faint electromagnetic hums into voices. It's a neat explanation, tidy enough to fit in a field journal, but you can't help feeling it's missing something. Stones that hum can still choose what they hum. Joke number 1. You tell the circle you hope it's not judging your pronunciation. Joke number 2. You warn the cat that if it starts repeating anything it hears in here, you'll have to put it in the credits. Joke number 3. You tell the stones you're happy to join the conversation, but you don't do small talk. You take a slow breath and step into the circle. The change is immediate. The air thickens, not in a choking way, but like stepping into warm water. Your heartbeat slows, the rhythm syncing with a low vibration that you can't quite tell is sound or feeling. You close your eyes. The glow paints your lids gold. At first, there's nothing but the hum. Then, just at the edge of hearing, a voice not calling your name this time says a single word. You don't recognize the language, but the meaning arrives anyway, like a coin pressed into your palm. Stay. The cat's tail swishes once. The stones seem to lean in further, the glow pooling brighter at their bases. An unresolved mystery keeps scholars and shamans arguing. If the circle tells you to stay, does it mean forever, or just for the night? A guide you met earlier swore it once told him go instead, and he left to find a tree had fallen across the path behind him, blocking his way. Others claim ignoring the message leads to misfortune, lost gear, sudden storms, the uneasy sense of being followed for days. You kneel, placing your hands on the soil inside the ring. It's warm, like a hearth that's been waiting for you. The hum threads through your bones, and for a fleeting moment, you feel as if you're standing in two places at once. Here, in the Hoia Baciu, and somewhere else entirely, a wide plain under a sky crowded with stars. No trees, no path. Just wind, and the sound of ancient stone speaking your name in a way that isn't a call or a command. When you open your eyes, the glow has dimmed slightly, as if the circle has said what it needed to. The cat hops down from its perch and walks to the far side, where the path slips back into shadow. You step out of the ring, the air instantly cooler, the forest sounds returning one by one. A night bird, a rustle in the undergrowth, the steady creak of branches settling. Behind you, the stones resume their debate. Ahead, the shadowed path seems to curve in a way you don't remember from before, as if something's been rearranged while you were listening. The cat doesn't look back, neither do you. Whatever's waiting in section 25 won't need to call your name, you're already on your way. The path beyond the speaking circle feels different. as if the forest has loosened its grip on you. The air moves more freely, carrying scents you hadn't noticed before, pine resin sharp enough to wake you, a faint sweetness like overripe fruit, and underneath it all, that mineral cool smell of water running somewhere out of sight. The cat pads ahead with the steady gait of something that knows exactly where this ends. You follow, and the trees begin to thin, their shadows stretching and breaking apart. Through the gaps, you catch the silver of moonlight on open ground. It's been hours since you saw that much sky. You step out at last into a clearing, not the kind you could stumble into by accident, but one that feels placed. The grass here grows in a perfect oval, damp with dew even though it hasn't rained. In the center stands a single tree, unlike any you've seen in the forest. Its bark is pale as bone, its branches smooth and bare, except for the very tips, where tiny white blossoms catch the moonlight. They don't sway in the breeze. In fact, you realize with a start, there is no breeze here at all. In the common telling, this is the heart tree. The oldest stories say it grows at the very center of Hoia Baciu, rooted not just in soil, but in everything that's ever happened here. People who reach it often feel an overwhelming calm, as if the forest has decided, for once, to let them leave without argument. Others describe it differently, like standing on the edge of a great drop, knowing you could step off and never touch the ground. You approach slowly, the grass muffling your steps. The cat circles the tree once, then sits at its base, tail curled neatly around its paws. You reach out to touch the bark, and it's warm, warmer than the air, almost like skin. The lesser-known variant says the heart tree will give you something if you ask properly, not in words, but with the whole of yourself hands on the bark, eyes closed, thinking only of the thing you truly want. Some say it's an answer to a question you didn't know you were asking. Others swear it's a memory, returned to you so vividly that you can smell and hear it as if it's happening again. A woman from Cluj claims she asked for nothing, and the tree still gave her a vision of her grandfather planting an orchard she never knew existed. You close your eyes and let your thoughts quiet. At first, there's nothing, just the hum of blood in your ears. Then a sound, so faint you almost miss it. A heartbeat, slow and steady, but not your own. It thrums through the bark under your hands, syncing with your breath until you can't tell which is which. Obscure theory seekers have their own take. They say the heart tree is a genetic anomaly, capable of storing and releasing chemical signals that affect the human nervous system, essentially calming or heightening your senses at will. Botanists have never confirmed this, because no one who studies it seems able to find it twice. It moves, they say, the way certain mushrooms appear in new places after rain. Joke number 1. You whisper to the tree that if it's going to read your mind, it should at least leave a good review. Joke number 2. You tell the cat that if this is the forest's idea of a gift shop, it's severely understocked. Joke number 3. You suggest to the blossoms that a little fragrance wouldn't hurt, even if mystery is the brand. When you open your eyes again, something lies at your feet, a small object wrapped in a curled, dry leaf. You kneel and pick it up. The leaf crumbles easily, revealing what's inside. A smooth stone, pale and round, with a single line of reddish-brown running through it like a seam. It's warm in your hand, the same warmth as the tree's bark. An unresolved mystery surrounds this stone. Some say it's a token of safe passage, proof that the forest has decided to let you go. Others believe it's an invitation to return, that once you carry it, the path back here will always find you, no matter where you start from. You don't know which is true. You only know it feels heavier than its size should allow. The cat stands, stretches, and starts toward the far side of the clearing. You glance back at the heart tree, and for a moment, you swear the blossoms are brighter, as if lit from within. Then the moonlight shifts, and they are just flowers again. You follow the cat into the thinning trees. The ground slopes gently downward, the forest opening into familiar shapes and sounds. The air smells of home, now damp earth, wood smoke from somewhere far off. The path ahead glows faintly with moonlight, and you realize you've reached the edge. When you finally step out of the Hoia Baciu, it feels like waking from a dream you're not ready to leave. The cat sits just beyond the tree line, watching you with the same unreadable gaze it's had all night. Then, without ceremony, it turns and disappears into the grass. You stand there a moment longer, the stone warm in your hand, the forest quiet behind you. You know you'll never be entirely sure whether it let you leave or simply decided you'd had enough for now. Either way, you're out. For now, The night air feels different once you've left the tree line. It's softer, looser, as if the forest's grip has been replaced by something gentler. You keep walking, but your pace slows. Behind you, the Hoia Baciu settles into silence, its shadows folding back into place. The stone in your hand still carries the tree's warmth, though it's fading now, bit by bit, like the last glow of embers in a fire. You roll it in your palm, tracing the seam with your thumb, wondering whether it's a line to follow back or a boundary you're meant not to cross again. The road ahead is familiar, though you can't say why. It's as if the forest has left a thread tied to your memory, one you'll feel tug gently now and then on rainy nights, or in dreams that begin with the sound of leaves. You think of the places you passed, the doorway in the mist, the page with its red streak, the pond that reflected what wasn't there, the stones that spoke without words. They don't feel separate anymore. They've threaded together into something whole, something that will stay with you whether you speak of it or not. A breeze stirs, carrying the faintest scent of pine and damp earth. You close your eyes and breathe it in. For a moment, you can almost hear the forest's hum again, low and steady, as if it's reminding you that it's still there, waiting. When you open your eyes, the path before you is clear, washed in silver light. You take one last look over your shoulder, but the forest is just a line of dark trees now, quiet and still. You keep walking, the stone in your hand, the story in your bones.